do solemnly swear
do solemnly affirm
that I support the constitutions
that I support the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and of the state of Indiana,
and of the state of Indiana,
and I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform my duties
perform my duties
as Monroe County Plan Commission member
as Monroe County Plan Commission member
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my skill and ability.
and to the best of my skill and ability.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if it is okay with the Plan Commission, I will go ahead and proceed with the Module 1. Okay. All right. So as Margaret stated, this is not a hearing for the Module 1. However, we are having the ordinance broken up into 3 modules in order to make it easier for the public to engage in drafts, basically of sections of the ordinance. And so this first module is what we are reviewing today. And at the end of the process, I will get to it in just a second, we will have a public hearing where all 3 modules are brought together and the public will have a chance at that point to also comment. But this module 1 is here for us to kind of go over, discuss changes, and then the public will have time to send us their edits, comments, questions, and we're hopeful that we can get those incorporated before we come back for the public hearing process. So I want to give a quick timeline, code organization, main changes that are being proposed here, and then I do have questions from the Plan Commission, and then discussing moving forward from here. So for those of you that were here in the December 14th meeting, I'm going to reiterate a few of the important talking points, and then we'll get to new questions for the Plan Commission. And then if the Plan Commission is able or interested in hearing from the public at that time, we will use tech services to help us incorporate you into the meeting to ask your question, and then we'll be able to have time for a little bit of Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and also introduce Liz Fields, who is our consultant with McBride Dale Clarion, and just give her a quick minute to discuss who she is and who she's with.
Thanks, Jackie. Again, my name is Liz Fields with McBride Dale Clarion. I'm just wanted to say a quick, thanks for being here. McBride Dale Clarion, we are a zoning and development service planning firm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been helping out staff with the writing of this ordinance for the past couple months, and just here to answer any questions moving forward with this module and the upcoming modules. So thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, so module 1 is where we are at currently, and we're focusing in on administrative and procedural requirements for the zoning and subdivisions sections. Module 2, as it was laid out prior, is more of your districts and uses, and module 3 is dimensional and development standards with definitions. So you're looking at putting it all together and having sort of requirements for lot sizes or districts, and it kind of pulls it all together. So as you can see, after we get through modules 1 through 3 drafting, you get to the entire ordinance, and that's when we start the public hearing process, and the public would be noticed. If you have property in Monroe County at that time, that would be the process starting. And in between here, we also have public engagement throughout the process. So just a little bit of organizational information for those of you that were able to access the packet. So as you'll see the new ordinance laid out, a few things to look for. So we have a title for different parts of the ordinance that kind of groups categories of things together that are important. You also have the chapter, which is often referenced in relationship to a process or planning process that you're going through. And then you also have a section of that chapter and then a subsection with content and information. So this new ordinance will be hyperlinked, which will be super nice. You'll also have informational headings at the top right, so you can kind of navigate and see where you're at in the ordinance on any given page. Additionally, if you were able to look through the packet, you'll see footnotes at this point. So this is our way of tracking what's changed from the existing ordinance to the new ordinance. So in this case, you would see footnote 3 and go to the bottom of the page and see what the notes are for this change from the last ordinance or current ordinance to this new ordinance. So Module 1 did cover quite a bit of ground. And so on the left-hand side, we have the chapters that are existing. And then on the right-hand side are how they're going to be reordered and regrouped in the new ordinance. So there is going to be some switch up of those chapter titles, but generally they're going to be better organized so that you don't have to go to 10 different spots to look for, you know, one planning process. It should be kind of a one-stop shop and better organized. So the main changes that are being proposed with this CDO is that we're combining the zoning and subdivision ordinances to avoid any redundancy. We're hyperlinking the document for navigation, reordering some content, putting some of the highly used chapters in the beginning. We're adding flow charts for ease of use, and we're also streamlining regulations between different departments to make sure that we are up to date on not only state statutes, but also local ordinances that have changed since the last time we did this process in 1997 is the last time this has been updated as one ordinance. So I do want to pause here for just a second before I jump into questions for the Plan Commission. Is there any questions before I get started or anything that I may have missed? Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple questions for the Plan Commission, and similar to the December 14th meeting, what I have are a few scenarios where the code has been updated in the packet that you'll see, and some questions as to kind of the options for moving forward with those changes. Okay, so starting on page 35 of the packet, the first question that we have is related to waivers for subdivisions. So to take a quick step back, subdivision waivers are basically when someone that is proposing to subdivide property can't meet the requirements, and so they have to request a waiver from that requirement. And then on the other end of that spectrum is kind of when you have someone wanting to build something on their property and they request a variance. So this is subdivision waivers where you're proposing a new subdivision and you need to waive a requirement. So some of the waivers that are fairly frequently asked for currently in our subdivision ordinance include right-of-way with dedication. So if someone can't meet the thoroughfare plan for the amount of right-of-way that they need to dedicate to get a subdivision, sidewalk installation, street tree installation, the requirement to bury overhead utilities, and then kind of a new requirement that we can also discuss here is road width from the access road or frontage from the access road. So I want to start with the first question, which is, do you have any issues from the way that we currently have waivers for these set of subdivision standards above? Are these standards okay to still be requested waivers from? And you can either put it in the chat, or if you want to raise hand or unmute. Margaret?
Well, I have a few thoughts about these waivers. Number one, when they're incorporated into a PUD, I find these waivers to be more problematic than with a small subdivision that is normally developed, and also existing subdivisions. I feel that a PUD should be given less, I guess, fewer waivers than should other neighborhoods. So that's, and that's my beginning shot across the bow.
Okay, and I'll just note for PUDs, a little bit different in that they can come up with new standards or different standards, but it is a good point that there is a standard by which a PUD being proposed, how far it deviates from certain requirements. So I think we could loop that back fairly easily to deviation, talking about these requirements. Jeff, you have your hand raised? Oh, and Jim after Jeff? Okay.
Yes, I guess I would like to, you know, maybe hear from you, but also this might be something that members of the public may want to comment on later on. But I guess I'd like to know what the issues that the planning department has had with these kind of waivers. I mean, in general, you know, I guess my general philosophy would be that I would like to regulate to the least degree necessary to achieve the public's interest. And so, yeah, what are the problems?
Sure. I will briefly say that I think that I'll give right-of-way width dedication as an example. So if the highway department is supportive of it and the planning department is supportive of it, and they're able to kind of compromise it with us to give a dedication that meets both needs, I think that that may be something that we could consider kind of getting into question 2. That be a plat committee decision, if that's appropriate to the plan commission. But those are kind of the things that staff likes having these as requirements, and that they need to be requested a waiver from. But I just think that the process could be a little bit more streamlined if we didn't make the applicant go through multiple, meetings or plan commission meetings if they're, not typically an issue that is denied. So, and then Jim Stainbrook has his hand raised next. Jim, I'm having trouble hearing you.
It indicates your mic's unmuted, but we can't hear you, Jim. But we do see that you're trying to speak.
Tech services, do you think, Michelle, could I send you Jim's number and you could help Jim get logged in?
Absolutely.
Okay, I will do that behind the scenes. Jerry Pittsford, you had your hand raised?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. My question really would be, and I'm not in disagreement with Mrs. Clemens, but a PUD is basically saying that you're not going to follow the guidelines of the ordinance. You're actually writing your own ordinance. So when we have deviations from the ordinance, is there some criteria we could use that says that a justification must be put forth for every deviation from the requirements of the ordinance? That would be my question.
That's a good question. Kind of like findings of fact.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. Just, anywhere there's a deviation from the requirements of the ordinance, even if it's just a simple matter of fact declaration, it would be nice. Or if the deviation is not using the parlance of the BZA, it's not a hardship, but it's simply a design factor, and it could be really as simple as that. The requirements of the ordinance don't fit the piece of property. The requirements of the ordinance don't fit the design. The requirements of the ordinance are not appropriate for this application in this area or for this use. That's what I have in mind.
Thank you. Tron and then Julie.
Yes, I guess my thoughts on this kind of might go along with McKim's comments, where I'd be curious where this isn't really working. Are there some good examples? Ultimately, I do think we should have some of these mechanisms where the Plan Commission or some subcommittees can look at that and make a decision, because there are a lot of incidents where staff might not recommend it, and the Plan Commission may go against staff's recommendations. And if we don't have that, their only other means is to go to the BZA to appeal it. So, I mean, I'm just trying to say, let's not try to relieve some work here that might just end up elsewhere as we're looking at this. Ultimately, I think it's functioned pretty well, but that was a question. If what is their means if staff is recommending a denial or denies it, they would have to go to the BZA?
No. So BZA would not be included in this process. If someone gets denied, let's say they get denied a waiver, they can either come back through and not ask for a waiver, basically amend their petition, or they can basically the choice is amend the petition, or they're denied because of the waiver issue. You can't get the subdivision without meeting the requirements, and if you don't meet the waiver requirement, then you don't meet the requirements.
Well, then that makes it even, in my opinion, more crucial that we have this in place, because it's our responsibility to interpret the ordinances, and we don't have to agree with staff. So I think if we move in any direction, we have to be very cautious, because some of these are very practical waivers and some aren't. So those are my concerns. And as you move forward, I would really like to, irregardless of which direction we take, have some mechanism where someone could petition the commission to look at this. I mean, I don't think we should be putting in some backstops that just ultimately says, sorry, you got to resubmit. If
Jackie, if I may be permitted, or Ms. Clemens, if I may be permitted, I'd like to follow up Tron's remarks.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Tron, I didn't mean to cause confusion. A PUD would never end up in a variance process with the BZA unless it was a situation where the PUD was totally abandoned and they try to do what they want to do with the guidance of the ordinance. A PUD specifically, and I know I'm not educating you, Tron, but others may be less aware. A PUD says the conditions of the requirements of the ordinance are not appropriate for the planned unit. So that's why you have a planned unit design. And they're basically writing their own ordinance, which is the case with the North Park development, which in some ways has been a hindrance to that development. But anyway, what I really wanted to point out was that in those instances, when they're deviating from the ordinance, if they're deviating for material reasons or because of situational reasons, it's nice to just make that clear. If it's simply a matter of design or preference of the developer, that would be nice to know as well. Maybe they don't want to conform to the landscape design requirements because of the specific topographical limitations of the development. But it may also be that it's not consistent with the aesthetic design that they're going for. So if we could just have simple declarations in all those areas where they're deviating from the ordinance as they quote unquote write their own ordinance, that would be very instructive. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. That's very helpful.
Julie, you have your hand raised?
Yes. So getting away from PUDs, because we would hear a PUD anyway, and so we would have all of this in front of us. I guess I have a couple of thoughts on this. And it seems that one of the ways that this could be made easier, because not every subdivision comes before the Plan Commission, right? So those are the cases that we're really focused on here, correct?
Yes.
So, because otherwise they're bringing the subdivision request or the rezone request with the subdivision request to us, and they can provide information on requested waivers. So we're looking at, so that's my first thing, is like what percentage are we looking at when we say that of subdivisions? Secondly, it seems that the problem may be, especially if it's a subdivision that wouldn't come before the Plan Commission at all, that the issue is that the staff is required to make this big packet of information, and then we have to advertise it, and then they have 2 hearings. And it seems that maybe the process could be shortened a bit with maybe a different sort of formatting where it could be heard at an administrative meeting or a regular meeting, and it needs only 1 hearing. And so there may be other, and then keeping the staff from having to make these big long reports. It may be a standardized form where the petitioner sort of writes out, hey, so as I'm making this subdivision, here's what we want to do. We can't put out the street trees because, and that would be sufficient to bring to the Plan Commission. Now, advertising is another thing that could be a delay, but I'm just thinking about those, what percentage is it that really are done outside of the Plan Commission in terms of subdivision? So are we talking about hundreds a year, or are we talking about a dozen a year? And if we're talking about a dozen a year, I say we just continue as we have. So, and then I think for the road width from access road is a little bit, needs a little bit of explanation. And that would be appreciated. I think for some of these, this has to do with neighbors as well, right? So the
Yes.
neighbor that lives on the access road, where they're adding a new property or a new residence, that can impact the neighbors, right? And so we always have to be cognizant and aware of that and try to accommodate that. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, and I'll add in, I thought of it later. I made this PowerPoint last week. I'm sorry. So the road width from access road is a sliding scale subdivision requirement that the road from which it's accessing has to be 18 feet wide. So that's the requirement there. That's
the only place that that's one of those that I know that we've seen a number of. And even just saying, hey, we could leave highway to make this decision on that one with its sliding scale, and it's about road width. They're making decisions about driveway permits, and they know the plans for the roadways. They know the level of service of the roadways. I am way cool with that being dropped off, and it seems like that would be the bulk of them. Thanks.
Thank you. And Jim, it sounds like you maybe are back on. Can you hear us?
Yes, Jackie, thank you.
Okay, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Well, I think we've moved beyond that. Thank you very much. I appreciate, I will mention by way of not apology, but explanation, this is the first time I've had all of this mess. So anyway, appreciate tech service helping and everyone's patience. But yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Jim. And stay on the line. All right. And then as kind of a moving forward from this slide, because we do have a couple questions coming up, but right now in the ordinance, one thing that staff could see that would be improved is that it's unclear which standards are allowed to be waived and which ones cannot be waived without reading through the content very thoroughly. So we would like to either make it illustratively clear, well, textually clear and also illustratively clear as you're looking through the requirements, what is even eligible for a waiver, because that's been something that staff has had to explain and would like to have that a little bit clearer. Jerry, did you have a comment or question on that? You're on mute, Jerry, if you're trying to speak.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. I don't think my point will be a very popular one, but that's all right. I've been there before. I think when you start delineating what standards can be requested to be waived and what cannot be waived, then you have really defeated, and to an extent, not to the fullest extent, but to an extent, you've defeated the purpose of the PUD, and you set yourself up for conversations you really don't want to have. Those are my thoughts in their entirety.
That's helpful, Jerry. All right. Margaret, you are on mute. I don't know if you were.
I just wondered if there were any other members of the Plan Commission who had other questions or comments about this section of the Module 1.
Doesn't look like it. So I'll
Okay.
move on.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yes. Okay. So the next question is in regards to requiring certified site plans. So right now, in order to get a permit for development on a piece of land, we do not have requirements for residential development to have a plan set that is certified by an engineer, architect, or surveyor. And so some of the things that staff has seen in not requiring certified site plans in the forefront is actually we end up with issues of people not building in the right locations. Once in a while, they'll be across a property line. They will end up with a home site specifically that doesn't drain well, or maybe is located too close to a karst feature. So there are some issues with not having stronger requirements in the beginning in order to receive a permit. So we have three options that we'd like to outline for you all and get your opinion on. And so option one would be require a certified site plan for all development in Monroe County. That could be anything from 120 square foot shed to a brand new home that's, multiple thousands of square feet. We already require a certified site plan for all commercial. So this is mainly a new requirement for residential. Option two would be require a certified site plan for development that meets certain criteria. So staff has kind of outlined a couple options that is currently proposed in the CDO draft of the ordinance. So if it's within an Eco 1 area, an environmental constraint overlay area, so you're so many feet from the lake, Griffey or Monroe, you're within 100 feet of floodplain, you're within a critical watershed area, all these things that can be kind of easily mapped on the GIS. And then option three is to use discretion and to require a site plan at the planning staff discretion. I would say we do utilize this at times, but more likely the discretion issue is that someone can't meet the standards, and so they have to go to Board of Zoning Appeals or ask for some sort of variance. And so we're at that point pointing them to get a certified site plan in order to give us the best information and make a recommendation to the BZA. So those are the three options. I'll go ahead and take questions. So Jerry?
Mr. Pittsford, you're muted, so
I just unmuted. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I really hesitate with option one because I don't know what the cost for a site plan would be. So I look at option three and I think that's good. Staff knows where things should be. And then I'll make a pitch for an idea that I've been throwing out intermittently for the last 15 years. I think in certain areas we should have certified excavators, and the county should be involved in that certification process. We have a tremendous number of well-qualified excavators who could go through the process of looking at the work that people do and saying, yeah. And I know that that's probably contrary to my normal inclination on keeping the size of government small, but I feel like every county should have a certification process for excavators because it is just so important, especially in areas where we have karst development and a lot of issues with erosion control in those karst areas than others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Tron Enright Randolph, and then Mr. McKim.
Yes, so there's a couple of things I wanted to address. I think I like option 2, but I think option 3's good too, because I do think staff would bring things to our attention. But I like option 2 a lot because I would like to see things that trigger maybe some of the certification that allows people some more predictability. Also, maybe we could write in something as far as if this is a pre-existing structure that, you know, maybe they don't have to go do all of this. I think there is more that we can expand with, like the eco in the 100-foot floodplain and the critical watersheds too, to really trigger what needs to be, you know, engineered and surveyed. Also, just I think we need to treat this very delicately. When we talk about looking at things from a GIS perspective, and then we're looking at a certified document site plan, those are very different in nature, and GIS is there for a tool for our purposes. So I think we want to, if we want to use that as a trigger mechanism, that might be something that is doable. You know, if it doesn't jive with what we have on GIS, or it comes within 1 foot of this watershed. So we do really want to know where the lines are on the ground. Also, we're looking at professions where some people, you know, might be, you know, right now I think it's like 2 to 3 months before you could get some people to come in here and provide these type of services. So somebody just wanting to do one simple subdivision, and now they have to wait 3 more months just to get it certified, and all these other things, it starts to create a very interesting discussion and a slippery slope. So I think unless it's option 2 or 3, it really needs to be ironed out. But I would prefer option 2 because I think that gives people predictability of what they're getting into. And I think that is one of the most important things we can do as we're trying to craft this document, is give people more predictability of what is going to possibly occur on their property or the surrounding properties. So
Thank you. Mr. McKim, and then Commissioner Thomas. Okay.
Yes, thank you. My inclination is option 2 for exactly the reason that Mr. Enright Randolph just spoke about predictability. But I guess I have 2 quick questions. One is probably for Liz as much as anything. Is there, you know, are there standards, or are there typical, which of these options or some other different approach more typical in other jurisdictions? And then my other question is, what would requiring a site plan typically add to the cost of a construction, of a residential construction?
Is that to be answered later, Mr. McKim? Or is there someone here who has that answer?
Well, the latter one, maybe not, but definitely I would think Dale McBride might be able to answer the former question about what's typical.
Okay, and Commissioner Thomas is next, and then Mr. Pittsford again. And if Mr. McBride is here and would like to answer Mr. McKim's questions, then. So Commissioner Thomas.
Okay, so a couple of things. So I put this in the chat, but I was wondering if using option 2 and using the MS4 operator stormwater, these are all really stormwater issues, right? That a map could be made and linked into this CDO, which will identify for people that they live in an area where a site plan, a certified site plan, will be required. And these things change, right? So if there's, let's say there's a project that happens that controls stormwater in an area that was uncontrolled before, then that shading can be lifted off, that overlay can be lifted off, and we can kind of proceed without the certified site plans. But it seems like something that needs to be fluid, no pun intended, rather than static and set and unable to change. So I would think that some form of option 2 can be used. Mr. Enright Randolph, I think you made a great point. I'm so glad you raised it about rebuilding on a previous footprint. So if there's, let's say there's a fire, there's a decision to demolish a building that's out of code or whatever it might be, and they want to build on the same foundation. But my inclination there is to still say, is it in this particular area? Because sometimes people have built houses where they really shouldn't have, and just because that house is no longer there doesn't mean we should just build it again. It might need that certified site plan, and this fits in really well with the things we're talking about on the Stormwater Board relating to having an inspection for every new construction that relates specifically to stormwater. So I think these could be tied together. Thanks.
Okay, and I have a comment that I'd like to make. Number one, I thought that Mr. Pittsford's suggestion of having a certified excavator would be a very important step in the right direction for our community. And I'm tending myself towards option 1 for site plans for all development in the county, and I might make some exceptions for small buildings like sheds, etc. But over the course of my service on this plan commission, I've heard a little bit too much of builders trying to game the system. You know, they say one thing to the consumer and another thing to us. And I think that we have to find a way to prevent that. And maybe this is the way. So I would like to not take option 1 off the table, even though there is an onerous cost for the buyer. I think that is a justified cost when the builders game the system. So I'd just like to put that out there.
Thank you. So I'll just make a quick note. All development in the county does have to have a site plan, but the key word here is certified. So yes, that makes sense. I'm going to come back to Jeff's question and see if Liz Fields with McBride Dale Clarion can answer that question about, is this typical in other jurisdictions?
Sure. I would say it depends. I've seen it both ways, that, a lot of communities do require certified site plans, but a lot of communities don't. I would say more rural communities, typically wouldn't require them. I would also say that they are definitely more important when somebody is building close to a setback line, or like we kind of have laid out close to a floodplain or something like that. If somebody's building a structure that's 100 feet away from the property line with a 25-foot setback requirement, a GIS map is probably going to be sufficient if there's no other environmental concerns on the property. But if somebody's very close to a setback line or close, there's concerns about environmental things on the property, those are the things that I think are very valid for the cost and expense of them. But I wouldn't say that there's a kind of a typical one-size-fits-all approach to this. But I'd be happy to kind of dig into this a little bit more and look at some kind of comparable county codes if that's something that you guys would like to see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there's quite a bit of information in the chat. I'm sorry, I'm not reading the chat as quickly as I need to, but I'll just, on this question, just to close the loop on this question, let's see. The latest point from Tammy Bierman, who is a planner, is lots of small acreage sites on Lake Lemon, and septic can be an issue. Maybe there's a option to include a threshold for properties in proximity of Lake Lemon. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and move us along in the interest of time. Jim Stainbrook has a question.
It's Mr. Stainbrook.
Hold on just a second, Jim.
Sorry, Jim, you'll need to hit the unmute button real quick.
Are we there now?
Yes.
I have listened to all the comments and questions, of course, but I would like to second Margaret's comments with reference to option one. You know, we have experience and learn from that, and experience nurture kind of thing. Experience tells me that option one would be a good choice. So for what it's worth.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move us on to the next question.
Wait, I'm sorry, but I have to interject because there's a big mixed batch of information, and you're supposed to take all of what we're discussing and move forward. I guess I'm a little uncertain what direction you're even going to pursue. So, you know, I can wait until I get the information back, but I guess it's a little difficult for me to observe, you know, what has really came from this discussion. I think what Margaret's saying is really neat too, and there's no reason we couldn't build in other waiver type things to not do the certified thing, and it kind of ultimately kind of is the same concept of option two. Ultimately, we're looking at potential waivers if we do option one, because we don't want to make everyone certified, is my observation. But I'm asking you what your observation is in the sense, so we have a sense of what the next draft is going to look like. Sorry,
Yeah, that's a good question, Tron. So where we have a mix of answers, and this one kind of, I could see some examples between blending options 1 and 2. That tells me that we don't have enough information likely in option 2, or that we're trending more towards option 1, and we need to come back to you with a better example that everyone can agree on. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption. I just
That's okay.
needed a little clarification.
And, you know, this is a, you know, ebb and flow conversation that we'll be coming back to. And at the end, if we're able to hear public comment as well, that might also influence option 1, 2, or 3. So I'm, you know, if we don't have a clear consensus, we'll move on, and maybe other ideas will also arise. Okay. So the other question that we have is related to use variance criteria. So right now, if a property owner in an estate residential zoning district is requesting a use such as a shopping center in this example, you'll see that the space right here in the use table is blank. And so in parentheses, that means not permitted. And then in contrast to that, we have an example of residential use, which is permitted. Agricultural use is conditionally permitted. All of this to explain that if something is not permitted in a zoning district, and it doesn't have to be shopping center, it doesn't have to be a state residential zoning, but a use is not permitted in a zoning district, we have use variance criteria. And typically that criteria is very difficult to overcome. And right now we have an additional standard beyond what the state requires that staff would like to propose to the Plan Commission that we remove, because in essence, it gives a little bit more ability for the applicant to make a claim for the use variance. And staff does understand the use variance as a relief valve as it relates to the zoning ordinance, but also the importance of following the procedure for a rezone, which involves a more legislative process, and it goes all the way to the county commissioners. A use variance is a 30-day process that could be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals that is essentially creating a non-conforming use because it's not permitted in any other part of the zoning district. So staff is proposing in the module 1 to remove this language here, and we wanted to get the take from the Plan Commission. Sorry, everyone is on mute. Okay, Jeff, Bernie, and then Margaret, I think you're on mute as well. Okay, so
I guess
Jeff, you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm not understanding correctly then. I mean, don't we want everything that we approve to be in concert with the comprehensive plan?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I would think that's a given.
Yes.
So if that's a given, I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're asking for. Are you asking for us to have the ability to allow uses that are not in keeping with the comprehensive plan?
Good question. So it will help. I will pull up the other standards in just a second, but you brought up a good point. So essentially this addition that is additional to the state statute allows for us to consider the comprehensive plan. Without this standard, the comprehensive plan is still considered. And essentially what I think the intention of this addition to the use variance standard was to say, if our zoning map is fairly outdated and we have a new comprehensive plan that maybe supports the use that the zoning map does not, is there leeway to allow for this use variance? Because really, the zoning map might change in the future in this way. So if it's supported in the comprehensive plan, but not in the zoning map. So does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Caritas? You're muted, sorry.
Jeff hit my question right on the money. I wasn't following very well. Thanks, Jeff.
Is there another person besides me who would like to speak? I would just like to make one statement that I've seen kind of omitted throughout this entire module 1, and that is a relative ignoring of agricultural land in our basic provision, in our purposes. We don't see agricultural land referenced, and also in this use variance, the agricultural purposes are not listed in this these 5 principles, and that's my first notation, that it seems as though not much is being done to speak to the need to preserve agricultural areas. So that's a general statement. And Mr. McKim, your hand is still up. Are you wishing to speak?
No, I said my piece. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, Jackie.
It looks like Tron has his hand raised. I'm gonna quickly share the screen to discuss just real quick to get back to the question for the use variance. So these are the current standards A, B, C, and D, and these are statutory.
Yeah.
So it's related to making sure the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, general welfare, use and value of area adjacent. The need for a variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property, and the strict application of the terms of zoning ordinance will constitute unnecessary hardship. So this E is what we would be proposing to remove, and we would stick with then the state statute requirements for use variance, which is somewhat of a higher bar to set to allow for anyone to get a use variance.
A through D is in the state statute.
Yes.
Right. When was E added? Was that in 97 or was that before 97? Do you know? I'm just curious. Well, you can always look at that later. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Okay, thanks.
So my question might be one of the easiest ones. We're not moving away from a use variance request in this ordinance, right?
No,
Okay.
it's still allowed as a request. Yeah.
I mean, just, as things change, I just want to make sure that that's part of the discussion, because if we were going away from that, then this discussion would be kind of mute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Stainbrook, you're Mr. Stainbrook.
You're muted, Jim. Go ahead and press unmute.
Now, I'm on the phone. Does that work?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So Jackie, C is the only one that's being considered for deletion, taking out C.
E is the one that's being considered. A through D, as in dog, is the state statute.
So A, though, along with the other three, that is current. That's a real concern to me. Something's wrong someplace here. Okay, but I'd certainly want to keep. Yeah. Okay, you're looking at E, A, and maybe some of these others, but particularly A. Now that's current, and that's applied.
Yes, that was not, A through D would be preserved.
And taking A as a for instance, then that's by state statute.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
John,
you.
okay, you're both, okay. All right. So Larry, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that E is part of the state statute as well. There are 5 provisions. It's where especially is the beginning where it was added, I think probably around 2015, 2016, was added to the ordinance. But the state statute requires us, if we have a zoning ordinance, to have these provisions in our ordinance and provide a way for people to seek a use variance. It's a requirement by statute.
Yeah.
It's a relief valve from circumstances where there might be a situation where a landowner would be totally deprived from being able to utilize their land. So it would still have the provision that says the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. However, the additional language would be removed, which will make it, I think, easier to prepare findings and actually add a little more flexibility to the BZA reviewing a use variance.
Thanks, Larry, for that clarification. So the highlighted portions would be what would be access of the state statute that staff would be removing.
Mr. Garatas?
Yeah, I think that those, along with what Larry's saying, I think that those were added, and I believe it was Mr. Irvine that suggested those whenever the comprehensive plan had gone through. And with his time on the BZA, I think that he was trying to find a little bit of flexibility in the variance process. So I don't know if that mimics what you said, Larry, but I think that that's how that came about, if I remember correctly.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you for that context, Mr. Garatas. Okay, so Jackie, if we're moving on then to the next.
Yes, and I believe this is the last question for the Plan Commission. So one of the questions that we have is in relation to amending a subdivision plat. And so when you amend a subdivision plat that's already been approved and recorded, it can either be considered a preliminary plat amendment that has to go through another public hearing process, or it is a final plat amendment that is reviewed at the staff level. So a preliminary plat amendment criteria right now is all of these in black are what we currently have as the standards for a preliminary plat amendment. The red addition at the bottom is what staff is requesting to add, as some situations have arisen recently where plat amendments have impacted the draining of the subdivision or drainage of the subdivision, and something that we would like to bring forward to the Plan Commission as a public hearing rather than a staff level review. So first question is, the item in red, or you can look at the items in black, but specifically the item in red, is that an amenable change to you? And then also kind of higher level, you don't have to get back to us right away today. Are there things missing from this list that you think, if they're changed from a original approval, that it would require for you for it to come back to the Plan Commission for a hearing? Margaret?
Well, yes, I would like to, number one, I would like to say that number 6 is really a great enhancement to our code. And I would also like to tweak that a little bit to say that it affects the draining of the approved subdivision or the neighboring built subdivisions as determined by the MS4 coordinator. In other words, we don't want to be part of reducing the stability of surrounding properties by virtue of our approvals.
All right. Anyone else? Larry, you have something you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I think, Jackie, I think we talked about this last week. One thing we might want to add is on number 2, right now it says it requires a preliminary approval if we relocate a subdivision access point. And we talked about also requiring preliminary approval if a new access point was added. Because we do have this situation where individuals are allowing easements through their lot, so a adjacent landowner can subdivide through the subdivision or access the subdivision. We think that affects other landowners within the subdivision, and it might be appropriate that there be preliminary approval and notice to the other people in the subdivision. That's just something we want to put out for discussion.
Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, just real quickly, I want to say that President Clemens has done a great job in making this assertion about the neighboring subdivisions. It might save us some public comment time. So I like that idea. I just want to throw my support behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford.
Okay, and then Bernie had put in the chat here that there was a suggestion that affects the draining, which cannot be addressed within the initial overall preliminary plat approval as determined by the MS4 operator. So that's helpful. Okay. All right. So this was my last prepared question for the Plan Commission, and I'll pose it to the Plan Commission if you would like to, at this point, entertain some questions or comments from the public, or how you would like to proceed. I know the last time we met on December 14th, we had kind of some ideas that we said if you have ideas or checklist items of things you want to be addressed in the new CDO, please send that to us via email or have them prepared. I know it's been a long time since then and a lot has happened, but now is kind of an open time for either the Plan Commission to address questions, comments, or if you would like to hear from the public. Looks like Jeff put in the chat, would like to hear from the public. Tron said agree. Margaret?
Yes, there's one item that's been on my mind, and because of my involvement with the group in the city, and also because McBride Dale Clarion is the consultant common to both the city and the county. And that is a matter that has come to my attention that I find a little bit problematic to understand. And that is that Bloomington, its development plan is being compared to Minneapolis. And I'm just having a real difficult time understanding that because, you know, although there are a lot of residents here on attending who are used to the features of modern technology and who can attend easily Zoom and who appreciate the opportunity to participate this way, there are a number of other people, and maybe a majority of people, who primarily do not participate this way. And so I'm concerned about the overall vision for our community, and I think it's better to state this up front and before too much more planning and updating is done. And I think that we really need some transparency from the planners, how Minneapolis might have come to be the comparison city for our small and humble town. So that's my initial comment, and that will be repeated throughout our process, I'm sure. But I'm concerned about public participation from the broader public, especially people who are not accustomed to or do not prefer to participate in this way. And I'm concerned about the overall vision for our community. So that's my first statement.
And I will note we have about, it looks like 34 attendees. And so several of them have their hand raised. And so if it's okay with the Plan Commission, we can have the tech services put together maybe a timer. How do you feel about that, Margaret?
Well, because we could hear from the public, we should hear from the public, but we do need to limit at this time an overrepresented voice. So I would like to take a vote from the committee to hear, is 2 minutes satisfactory? And if people feel that that's okay, fine. If not, we will reduce it to 1 minute. So if there is a no vote, we will reduce the public comment to 1 minute. So I would like Mr. Wilson to call the roll, yes or no, 2 minutes from the public at this time.
You're on mute, Larry.
Is this in the form of a motion, I assume, or just consensus?
Oh, this is consensus.
Okay, the request is to limit speaking in the public to 2 minutes, is that correct?
From the individuals wishing to speak, and if the vote is no, we will roll back to 1 minute per person. So if you feel that 2 minutes is too long, vote no, and we will have another consensus opportunity that would roll it back to 1 minute.
Okay. Tryon Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garrett-Haas,
Yes.
Smith McKim,
Yes.
Rick Pittsford,
Who?
Jerry Pittsford.
You said Jerry.
And he's on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It broke up. I didn't hear my name. That was Larry's fault, not mine. I blame Larry. Yes.
of course you do. Jim Staybrook,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes, and I ask that we please let people know where they can send comments via email or snail mail, or where they can call in.
okay,
Thank you.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Mark Clemens.
Yes.
The consensus is to allow 2 minutes per speaker.
Okay, tech services, if you wouldn't mind sharing a timer with us, and then I will go ahead and call on the folks that have their hand raised.
And I would like to thank the public for attending and for sharing their thoughts with us at this time. Thank you. Thank you for participating.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so tech services looks like they have it on their screen. All right, so we will pay attention to that. So the first person that we have with their hand raised, tech services, if you could assist, is Donna Malum.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My husband and I, Zach and I, own the Wampler house on the same side of the road as the proposed area, and 4900 South. So basically 2 plots down. And we have seen the model and talked with the owners, and we approve of it. We will-
Donna?
yes.
Sorry, just to interrupt. This isn't for the Clear Creek Urban yet. We're just talking about the new ordinance that's coming up. Do you have any comments on the
Oh, I'm
new
so
one?
sorry. I thought this referred to that. In fact, I was told to watch it because of that.
Yeah, you can certainly make comments, but this won't be incorporated into the Clear Creek Urban
Okay.
public
Right.
comment, which I think is what you wanted to speak to.
Right. Every person that lives in our little community here likes the idea of new things coming in, but we are all very concerned, of course, with the flooding and with the water maintenance. And that's the one thing that frightens us about any new development.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, that's helpful in general. Do you have any other comments or questions?
Well, it's a little concern about traffic density, of course, because that road is going to become an entrance to possibly a bigger community behind it. The something acres.
Yeah.
Southern Acres or something like that. So we are a little concerned about today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Okay,
opportunity.
And the next we have,
Okay, can you hear me?
yes.
All right. My name is Dave Warren, and I live in Fieldstone in the urbanizing area of Monroe County. This general area surrounding the city of Bloomington, according to the county's urbanizing area plan, is expected to nearly double its number of households between the years of 2013 and 2050, as more people and families move here to take jobs in the city or the county, or for the great schools, or to retire, or for the quality of life that our community provides. The CDO being drafted now must pay close attention to the fact that our desirable community will not stop growing simply because some wish it to. Already we've seen the impacts of slow housing growth contributing to high prices and rents, sprawling development, and a loss of rural land. But I worry that the county commissioners may be preoccupied with concerns about annexation that could be clouding decision-making regarding development in the urbanizing area and meaningful progress on the CDO. I think it is important for this body and others to discuss and debate this possibility publicly, as decisions made based on annexation fears may only exacerbate growth and development pressures in the county going forward. Annexation, whether one thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea, is an authority of the city. There is nothing the county government can do to fight that authority aside from exerting political pressure, nor is there anything in any of the documents we introduce into evidence every meeting that suggests annexation considerations should be a criterion for decision-making. Those wishing to slow down more compact development close to the city due to annexation concerns are implicitly admitting that such developments including mixed uses and multifamily housing, are valuable. Valuable for people, valuable for communities, valuable for our housing and commerce ecosystem. Constraining such value development reduces the prospects of adding much needed homes for the fastest growing part of our county, which also happens to be parts of the county with the closest proximity to important assets like public transit. At the same time, constraining growth in the urbanizing area despite continued population growth in the county will help accomplish what we all want to avoid, which is the continued loss of land in the larger but less populated rural
Thank you, Mr.
parts.
Warren. Thank you. Thank you. Just for the record, this is not a discussion about annexation at this time. So we can hear from the next member of the public.
Okay. If anyone wishes to speak, they may raise their hand, or if they would like to, Michelle, is the chat function enabled for all panelists? Or, sorry, all attendees?
Yes, all attendees should be able to chat directly to the panelists.
Okay.
I have a comment, and my comment is Dave Warren served as a Plan Commission member, and I think he brings a bunch of insight to this discussion, and to limit his comments to 2 minutes is just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but I think we have gave more grace to other members of the Plan Commission to kind of totally inform us. He spent quite some time with us, and to hear his comments, I think, are only important. And this, I'm irritated. I hope that comes out.
Yes, we hear you, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Then I would like to motion that we suspend our agenda and allow Dave Warren to complete his comments.
I would like to hear from Commissioner Thomas.
I don't know what the point of order is, but I just made a motion.
All right, I'll second.
Okay, then we should have a vote.
Okay, let me understand what the motion is. It's a little hard to hear. But
I would
basically,
like to suspend our regular order to allow Dave Warren to finish his comments if he so
Okay.
chooses.
Can you put a time limit on that, please? Just to be fair to others?
okay.
He's an ex-member of the Plan Commission. I don't think he's here to exhaust our time. I think he's here to make a statement, inform us of what his observations and opinions were. I would not like to put a time limit on it. Okay, sure, less than a half hour. Would you
Okay.
accept that
Can
as
I
a
offer
friendly
a
amendment,
quick
Jeff?
question? Friendly, can we ask Dave how much time he needs?
That's fine with me. Of course.
So we're going to spend more time discussing this than Mr. Warren would take to just complete his comments.
Hey everyone, I just needed, 45 more seconds. I was editing it on the fly to try to get under 2 minutes.
Okay, sounds like we have a motion, Margaret, maybe, and then a second.
Let me ask a question. Since it will take longer to tabulate a vote than for him to finish his comments, can we by consensus just agree to allow him 45 more seconds?
Or
Sure, we can. I just, as you know, I like to move meetings along, and I do that in the interest of all of us who serve. So I do like to move meetings along. So in the interest of the time, Mr. Warren, please feel free to finish.
Okay, so first, I just want to say thank you, and I wanted to say welcome to Dee Owens, and best of luck to you and everyone else on the Plan Commission this year. Also, it was an honor and a pleasure to serve on the Plan Commission. I wish you all the best and hope you don't shy away from these and many other important good faith debates about the needs of our community. Thank you.
Okay, is the next member of the public here ready to make a comment?
Yes, we have Robert Logsdon.
Mr. Logsdon, welcome.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for taking my comments. And now, are we on the development on the intersection of that road and Roger Street?
Not quite yet, but you may offer some comments generally.
I'll hold my comments to that. If I just got a little confused of where we are in the line of thinking here.
Okay, we will call on you at that time.
To be
Thank you
sure,
very much.
just to the public, we're talking about Module 1 and changes to the development ordinance. We're not talking about any of the cases that are on the agenda for tonight involving specific properties. So if the next person who would like to speak about Module 1 is here, we'd be grateful to hear your comments.
I don't see anyone, Margaret.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Well, then, is there anything that we need to do at this point? Or Jackie, do you have any further instructions for us about how to interact with you about this module and what you need from us?
Yes, so if I saw that Mr. McKim has some comments ready to go, if you could compile those and send it to planning staff in an email. Anyone that wishes to be involved in the CDO, just for those listening as well, and if they would like to submit their comments, the best way to do that is to send it to planningoffice@co.monroe.in.us. You can also go to our website, monroecdo.com, and there is a sign-up page for our listserv. And so with that, we will be coming back to the Plan Commission. The last step that I do want to make sure that we vote to proceed on, since this was the second hearing, or sorry, second meeting for Module 1, is we need to decide whether we want to proceed to Module 2 as a Plan Commission. So I would like to entertain someone to make a vote to proceed with Module 2. And I will just say that Module 2 would include zoning districts, which is going to be done with a zoning map draft as well. Excuse me. A use table with any kind of special uses or conditional uses, and then overlays and special districts. So that would be what would be incorporated in Module 2, and this vote would be to proceed with the drafting of that, similar to what we did with Module 1, to move forward with that with public engagement as well.
I move we move forward on Module 2.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we move forward on Module 2. A vote in favor is a vote to move forward with the next phase of the CDO. Barbara Clemens,
No.
Trina Wright Randolph,
Was there a recommendation by staff on this? Sorry, we jumped right into a vote pretty quick.
Sure, staff recommends proceeding.
Yes, I vote yes.
Veritas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford.
No, I think it can wait.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I think it can wait.
Okay. Jim Steinberg,
Sorry, Jim, you're on mute.
Thanks again, Jackie. Am I there now?
Yep.
Heretofore, things have gone surprisingly well, I thought, with our Zoom meetings, but I've had an awful time this evening. I realize I'm only one out of the 9, along with the other 50 attendees or 30 some attendees. But in any case, there were some questions. I'd reference page 26, so it's clear that I'm just blowing smoke in the air. And with that in mind, whatever it is you hear me saying, I'm going to vote no.
okay. Julie Thomas,
I'm going to go ahead and vote yes, knowing that we can still make some changes to Module 1.
okay. Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Sorry, Dee, I don't know if we caught that.
So sorry, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Motion carries 6-3.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on. I've gotten a little bit buried in the paperwork, but let's see. The first item on the agenda was continued by staff, and so we are about to enter the discussion about the 2011-REZ-08, the Fraso rezone. This is a preliminary hearing with a waiver of final hearing requested concerning 2 acres of 61 or more parcels in section 15 of Benton South Township. Staff, if you would be so kind as to present the case, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Margaret. So yeah, the petition site, technically what is being asked for, the petition site is 2 parcels. The 3 parcels totaling that they own is 62.2 acres. So they're asking for roughly 4 acres to be rezoned. It gets a little confusing. So right now they are a mixture of zoning between estate residential, ER, agricultural residential, and the whole area is zoned Eco 3. So they own a little bit of land across the road from South Bremen's Creek. So on the bottom right is how it's currently zoned. So in October, they did start to pursue doing a sliding scale subdivision and realized there were a few issues. So one of which is that there are these two small lots, and the smallest lot, which is 1 acre, it is 4848, I believe, is not shown in the correct location. And the location shown on GIS has it zoned as ER, which would be a consistent zoning for the area. There is a little bit of ER zoning next to it, south of the road. There are some small lots. It's consistent with the 1997 zoning, which you can see in Exhibit 3 in my report. To correct myself, it's 4828, the lot that is actually farthest to the east. So the surveyor discovered that the 4828 is actually directly adjacent to, to 4848, the other small lot. So on the bottom right, is my silly little illustration where I try to show where the correct location of the property boundaries are, and the correct locations of the zoning as it is shown. So as we can see right now, with 4828, the other 60 acres would be impossible to subdivide. So it kind of seems like a zoning error, except that, we do see that in the 1997 zoning maps, they are consistently shown apart. So what the petitioner is requesting is that they remove the zoning, the ER zoning from across the road. So if Jackie, if you want to go to the next slide, they remove the zoning, the ER zoning from across the road, and also then switch the zoning so that the two small lots are both ER, and the area across the road is agricultural reserve. So technically it's like 4 acres that are switching. Thank you. So the area is located in South Minton Township, and it is currently zoned rural residential. So this kind of, we are not considering the subdivision at this point. In the future, we might possibly, if there are waivers or not. But right now, it's the rezone. So moving forward with the rezone, it would make it more consistent with the zoning with the accurate locations of the lots where they exist currently. So the area has a good amount of buildable area. There is some slope. It is an Eco 3. There are a couple of pictometry photos on the right. It was hard to get a good illustration, but those two small lots are right next to each other. So it is kind of intuitive that they probably were supposed to be zoned estate residential right next to each other. So this slide is currently the petitioner's submitted site plan. This was adapted from the sliding scale plat, so ignore the title. But it kind of shows, well, it accurately shows the lot where it's shown on GIS and the actual accurate lot location. And then does include the buildable area and things. So I put together this small table. It's on the first page of this report that kind of tries to communicate the area that's being changed. So we have at least 1 acre that was Ag R turning into estate residential. that would be lot 1, the 60 acre sum. On the 60 acre lot, there's also the 2.7 acres. That would be changing from estate residential to ag RR. That's the one that's across South Bremen Creek Road. Lot 2 would remain estate residential, and then lot 3 is the small one that has the accurate location. It would change from ag RR to ER. So staff does recommend approval of the rezone based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway and Drainage Engineer reports. Does anybody have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Crecelius?
I'm not seeing anyone, Margaret.
If not, then we can move to a vote if there's a motion. And a second.
Jim,
Mr. Stainbrook?
go ahead and unmute, Jim.
Well, Con, did you have something? I was going to move. I move on agenda item or on number 2011 dash.
There's a note in, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there is a note in the chat that we have not allowed the public to speak. I guess I'm not hitting on all cylinders tonight, colleagues. I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Stainbrook. I'm really sorry. So is there a member of the public who would like to speak on this petition, either for it or against it?
And you can notify us by putting your raised hand function or putting something in the chat.
Okay, then we can revert back to the motion, Mr. Stainbrook, if you would like to continue.
Yes. I move that we approve 2011 REZ 08 as the staff recommended the rezone based on findings of fact and the highway and drainage consideration reports.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
The vote is on the petition to amend the zoning map in regard to the Fraso property at on Bremen Creek Road at 4828 and 4848 North Bremen Creeks Road. A vote in favor is vote to rezone the property.
It's to send a positive recommendation, sorry, to the commissioners.
I'm sorry, yeah. To send a favorable recommendation on the rezone position to the commissioners and waive the final hearing. Again, a vote in favor is vote to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners in regard to the map amendment on petition 2011-REZ-08. Bernie Garitas?
Yes.
Jeff McKim?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Jim Steinbrook?
You're muted, Jim.
Julie Thomas?
Yes.
Amy Thompson?
Yes.
Lee Owens?
Yes.
At one time, I thought I almost understood this, but I vote yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
Troy Randolph?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, and to my colleagues on the commission. I'm so sorry for being a little bit out of sorts tonight. So the next item on the agenda is 2010-PUO-03, Joseph Green Outline Plan Amendment 2 in the Clear Creek Urban this is a preliminary hearing and they're requesting a waiver of the final hearing. So Drew, if you would like to present this, we would really appreciate it.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Jackie, will you go ahead and go to the next slide? All right, so this is the Joseph Green Plan Unit Development Outline Plan Amendment 2, in other words known as Clear Creek Urban PUD. They're requesting a rezone of the property to a new PUD, which is located at 4831 and 4833 South Rogers Street. It's currently made up of 3 parcels. 2 of the 3 parcels are to be transferred in accordance with an administrative plat that is on hold in the planning office. And as part of the PUD petition, the petitioners are requesting to amend required right-of-way dedication for that road intersection in order to subsequently record that administrative plat and make the property all one legal lot of record. They're petitioning to amend the zoning map from estate residential, or RE1, single dwelling residential 3.5, or RS 3.5, medium density residential, MR, and an existing plan unit development known as the Joseph Green Plan Unit Development, all into one new plan unit development called Clear Creek Urban. The proposal of the subdivision, or excuse me, the plan unit development is a mix of attached townhomes, multifamily residences, and commercial space. The petitioner states in their written statement that the development is designed to provide additional housing options for working individuals and families within the county and act as a neighborhood center for Clear Creek community. The development will include multiple road connections and alternative transportation connections, such as a multi-use path. And the petitioner states that the development will be built in 3 phases over 3 years, between July 2021 and July 2024 on their current projected timeline. All right, so in this section, I've highlighted areas of the petition site that are existing and the new lots that are being acquired that will all be eventually combined into one succinct lot. The yellow sections in the diagram here are transfer areas from the Southern Meadows petition, yet to be recorded and added to the petition site. The red is the portion that is currently zoned PUD, which is the Joseph Green PUD and its associated permitted uses that exist there. And the green section is the portion of property recently added by way of quiet title action from an abandoned railroad corridor. Some background of the petition site here. There was an enforcement case opened by the building department. In May of 2020, the petitioners applied for a demolition permit for structures located on the property. And as part of the ILP process and the work covered by the building department, they were only permitted to completely remove the structure. Instead, the petitioners split the building in 2 and made modifications that were not covered under the normal ILP and building permit that was issued. However, since then, the building department has issued a new letter after doing some inspections, and we have that letter here. It was not included in the packet because it came after its publishing, but just for reference and the record here, we do have an update regarding that open enforcement with the building department. Okay, next we're going to move along with some of the maps for this petition site. It's located in Perry Township, Section 20. It's on South Rogers Street in the Clear Creek community. It has multiple different zoning districts currently. MR, RE1, RS 3.5, the existing PUD are all involved with this petition. And the comprehensive plan has it designated as Makua Mixed Residential. Here are some site conditions. As you'll note, the northernmost portion of the property is entirely in floodplain. That will remain unused for the majority of the development. The northern portion is located entirely in floodplain, just stated that. Petitioners are proposing stormwater management to be managed underground on proposed lot 2, which will be just south of the blue square to the north that you can see there, the rectangle, as well as on the south end of the property with a proposed detention basin. We can go over some of the drainage specifications that they have provided later on in this presentation. We were able to get a preliminary idea of what they expect drainage to be here. Jackie's just flipping through some aerial photographs of the property, as you can see along South Rogers Street and the That Road intersection. Here we have some permitted uses. We've talked at length about these. The existing uses listed on the left of the screen are the existing uses permitted under the current Joseph Green PUD. And then the two larger lists are the currently proposed uses for the new PUD that have a range of uses. Through time, the petitioners have reduced this list quite a bit. They're trying to pin down the classification of neighborhood type uses for commercial. They're trying to get in line with the comprehensive plan that for mixed residential that states some neighborhood commercial uses are expected or permitted. Now we're going through some of the design standard comparison, and landscaping, parking, and infrastructure will be analyzed here. Overall, there are considerable design standards that deviate from the ordinance, the current ordinance. Certain aspects include minimum lot area as well as minimum lot width, and some other aspects involving just the general design standards for the PUD. I will state that the petitioner did provide some examples of other PUDs in the county that do exhibit similar lot areas and lot widths. I included those as new findings in red font in the petition packet, just so you know that there is some comparison, at least a little, for this PUD among other PUDs in Monroe County. There was also some discussion on open space requirements for this PUD that staff is still debating about and concerned about with respect to usable open space, given that a lot of the proposed open space that the petitioner is suggesting is involved in floodplain. Moving on to landscaping, they are petitioning for no landscape buffer yards between the lots that will be created through a major subdivision once this development is approved. So they're requesting that no buffer yards between each lot within the PUD have landscape, but they will have landscaping along the outer exterior border of the planned development, as they state in their outline plan document. They also suggest to have street trees permitted within the public right-of-way between the sidewalk and multi-use path curb, but only where the front building setback is 0 feet. And that section where the front setback is 0 feet will be in front of the paired townhomes. Everywhere else, the proposed street trees will be outside of public right-of-way. Parking, the petitioners have provided a parking summary. Each of the buildings will have a separate parking available to them, but also they note in their proposal that they are requesting that the entire PUD's parking requirement be met on any of the lots within the PUD, meaning that it's a shared parking for the entire PUD. But as a summary, building 1, which will be mostly commercial with a few levels of residential space above, will have 15 parking spaces along with 10 residential garages. Buildings 2 through 4, which will be the paired townhomes, will have 15 residential garages. And then building 5, which is going to be on the south end of the property, will have 1 commercial space available on the lower level, and then 1 residential space above will have 20 parking spaces. So that's a total of 60 parking spaces, where a lot of those parking spaces for building 5 are actually proposed to supplement the parking at the US Post Office, which is just right across the street from that section of the PUD. infrastructure and access, roads, sidewalks, sanitary sewers, stormwater management, all these things are listed in the packet. Sidewalks will be constructed along West That Road as part of the Southern Meadows subdivision. Multi-use path along South Rogers Street will be constructed as well as part of that petition, but extended through this PUD. This PUD will also take advantage of the proposed intersection of South Rogers Street and West That Road that will be extended with the Southern Meadows petition as well. Sanitary sewer connections are available in this area. Stormwater management will be analyzed by the Monroe County MS4 coordinator through the development plan process and site plan process. We do have some preliminary ideas for that we'll get to later. There is some City of Bloomington water hookups available. We do have a letter from Bloomington, City of Bloomington Utilities. There's no new street lighting proposed for the PUD, and other public utilities in the area are available. Here we have a overview illustration of what the petition site will look like in general. Note that the north is to the right of the photograph. That whole green section just north of building 1 is almost entirely in floodplain. And then as you go south, building 1 is the one with 5 commercial spaces on the lower floor. And then as you go up each floor, I believe there are 3 stories. There will be residential spaces in those. Then there's the West That Road connection, 2-way driveway for each direction, north and south for this PUD. And then buildings 2, 3, and 4 are paired townhomes that will exhibit the sawtooth roof line that we see in the Monroe County Government Building and the City Hall building. It will connect all along the front. So it'll look like one structure, but they will be in fact 3 separate buildings. And then building 5 at the very end will be that commercial space on the bottom with residential space on the top. And then that parking lot to the south of that or left will be servicing the US Post Office, as well as the PUD. So here's a zoom in of building 1 with the associated parking spaces, as well as informing you that it's ground level commercial as well, and residential spaces above. Buildings 2, 3, and 4, those paired townhomes with garage spaces in the rear. And then the southern portion of the PUD with building number 5 and the extra parking spaces for the post office and the rest of the PUD. I included some images here of the proposed technical site plan. More of this would be evaluated through the development plan process, which would be the next step for this PUD. But it is nice to see some of the measurements called out here and see more detail of the technical side, the inclusion of impervious pavers, I believe, for parking, as well as the call out for the Smithville, I think it's Smithville, utility structure to the north that will not be involved, as well as other details that are useful for analyzing PUD. Here we have another technical readout for this PUD. This one shows the proposed lots that each of the townhomes will be present in. This major subdivision will have to go through a major subdivision process after the development plan. And this is kind of giving you a layout of what that might look like with the new lot lines for each townhome. We do run into some issues with design standards with the current ordinance, with, like I said before, with minimum lot size and lot width. But again, there are some examples of PUDs like this in the county. So here we have a preliminary drainage plan for the property. You'll note that under building 1 to the right of the photograph here is some proposed drainage to occur underneath. And then on the south end of the property or to the left, there is the second proposed drainage area that could potentially be a detention basin. And then there's also some drainage proposed along South of Rogers Street as well to help curb some of the impervious cover and management of stormwater. Here we have a few images requested by one of the Plan Commission members to get an idea of what the height will look like for this planned unit development. Some of these images might be difficult to see, but it does give you an idea of how tall certain objects are and their associated heights to give you kind of a feel of what it might look like. So you'll note the silo there has a associated height with it, as well as some of the other structures to get a general idea of what we're looking at with height. On the next slide, thank you, is an image of the proposed height for each of the structures. This will be building 1. The leftmost photograph is of the petition site on the left of South Rogers Street there. And the building 1 will be a maximum height of 42 feet and then go down to, I think it says 32 feet. It's hard to see on my screen. And then some of the homes on the other side of South Rogers, just to get some comparison here, are 20 feet high. The structure to the right of this page is a similar structure that the petitioners have constructed elsewhere in Indiana. They're going to be using a similar type design. So you can see that structure height there goes from 42 to 32 there. More photographs of the area with the height with respect to proposed building 2 and building 5. The model pictures on the bottom of this page were provided by the petitioner and give an idea of what kind of heights we're looking at along South Rogers Street. And then the 2 upper photographs giving you an idea or representation of what it would compare to other structures in the area. All right, so overall, staff recommends denial based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and Drainage Engineer reports. As stated before, staff has some outstanding concerns for this proposal. With respect to, drainage information provided. We did just get some preliminary information, and we know that the petitioner is amenable to working with the Monroe County MS4 coordinator to make sure that all drainage ideas and concerns are addressed. The interpretation of limited amount of proposed usable open space provided. I mentioned that earlier when we were talking about the floodplain and open space for each of the proposed lots and the PUD itself. The large number of permitted uses and related lot coverage that relates to the overall number of permitted uses for this PUD, and then the petitioner's attempt in trying to pare those down into a more neighborhood type use. Proposed development standards greatly deviating from any current zoning district under Monroe County zoning ordinance. There's a lot of deviation with the zoning ordinance with respect to design standards. Other PUDs do offer some comparison, but overall, when we compare PUDs, we compare them to the zoning ordinance themselves, not other PUDs in general. And then whether the outline plan will ultimately comply with the submitted plan set. That item is a planning staff's concern with just making sure that the outline plan will meet up with the development plan later down the road. We don't want to set an outline plan that may have to change multiple times through amendments just because the development plan continues to change or alter in the future. So we would like to see some working around with the outline plan that makes it a little bit more flexible in that regard. And then finally, the fact that parcel size is a limitation that is not reflected in the current outline plan. And that is in respect to approximately 1.3 acres of buildable area on the site. And after subtracting right-of-way, floodplain, the 42-inch main sanitary sewer line that runs through the property and the easement connection to the property, there's not much space here. And the petitioner is requesting approval of 5 separate buildings, which staff believes is too many given the physical constraint on the site. I will now take any questions, if any Plan Commission members have any.
There was a question in the chat, sorry, from Bernie about the update of the building department. Can you, I'll get back to that slide, just kind of summarize the building department's letter?
Sure. So basically, the building department states in this letter that they received records for the property and determined that there was has been a permit issued for the location for the demolition. They also received a complaint regarding unsafe existing electrical service and wiring servicing the structure. The demolition work was commenced and completed per the building department's satisfaction, and following a notification, the building department is no longer concerned with the electrical complaint that has been addressed appropriately.
Well,
Thanks,
Mr. Pittsford, and then Mr. Enright Randolph, and then see if there are any others. Okay. So Mr. Pittsford.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Clemens. I, first of all, want to agree with staff having visited the site. I think 5 separate buildings is too much here. My first real question is, how appropriate is this space really for multifamily use? I realize that it's in proximity to a school building, but given the physical constraints, is it really appropriate for multifamily use? So that's one question. The second question would be, I look at really large monolithic structures, even if they're separate buildings, in quotes. It's a monolithic structure against a fairly well-traveled road. Is this too urban, really, in comparison to anything in downtown Bloomington? What do we see in downtown Bloomington where you see this sort of a monolithic, though separate building structure at this height? It seems disproportionate and out of place, if you will. And then my last question is really straightforward, and that is, what's the traffic load going to be when the connection is made to that road? So when you look at the proposed roadway connection, which I believe is a done deal, what are you going to see in terms of daily traffic load traversing the adjacent subdivision, accessing Rogers and that road from that intersection? Those are my questions in entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. So Drew, did you have any comments for Mr. Pittsford, or should we go on to Mr. Enright Randolph?
I think I can address at least one of the questions with multifamily. We do know that there is a proposed subdivision going on to the east of this PUD, the Southern Meadows Petition. And I know that overall multifamily dwellings are fairly limited in permitting in Monroe County. So a lot of the time multifamily has to come through a PUD development. But to speak on the suitability of multifamily in the area, that's when we kind of draw our comparisons to what the comprehensive plan states. And that comprehensive plan states in this area, it designates it as mixed residential, which does promote some varying housing options. So with that regard, I would say multifamily would fit, but of course there are other limitations and concerns that could be addressed here.
Well, if I might be indulged here for a moment,
Yes.
I can understand the idea of the zoning because you look at proximity of services and roadways and all that. But when I look at this and I think about the intensity of multifamily, and I look at the opportunities for outdoor recreation, all of which require, to some extent, walking along what I believe is or will become a highly trafficked road, that is cause for concern and gives me a moment of pause. So that being said, can you speak to the comparison between what we see in downtown Bloomington on the height of the structures, not to mention the residential density, which is a secondary concern. But just when you look at the height of the structures compared to, say, College Avenue or College, College or Walnut, these seem to kind of dwarf what we see presently along College and Walnut. In this location, it seems out of place.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Enright Randolph, and then Commissioner Thomas, and then Mr. McKim.
Okay, so it looks like there's a lot of ambiguity in the recommendation. So I'm going to kind of ask some of the same questions I think Jerry was asking. With the recommendations there, it doesn't really state anything as far as density or height. It says maybe 5 buildings isn't good, which then could reduce the density, but it doesn't say the density's too high. It doesn't say the heights are out of place. So it kind of creates this discussion where I feel like I'm chasing my own tail, if you will. So if you could address those two things about density and height and how that's not really in that recommendation directly, in particular, it's not addressing those concerns. There might be some things that could relate to those. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I had one other question, but if you address those, I think I could follow up immediately with my other question. Thank you.
Sure. With concerns with density as well as height, we fall into the discussion of the design standards comparison with the ordinance. And that's where staff recognizes that there is deviation there. The minimum lot size for this proposed PUD with respect to the existing underlying zoning districts is significantly smaller. So that speaks to the density difference. And then to height as well, there is a minimum height or a maximum height for the different underlying zoning districts that this PUD does enable a little bit higher, I believe. I'll have to look back again in the design standards table. And those aspects in comparison to the existing zoning ordinance is what staff is concerned about, just the general deviation from the ordinance itself.
Okay. So, so density and height is part of your concerns. It just doesn't kind of clearly point those out. So that's what I'm getting at. And then I guess what I am getting at is we've done this enough time. What is really, I mean, I guess it's your recommendation, but what is really kind of making this where staff can't get behind it? Just all of these in particular concern? Is there like one that stands out more than the other? Because I have seen staff recommend waivers and things and deviations. So what's really one of the most major concerns? And if you'd like to pass that question off to Larry, that's fine, or Jackie. But what really jumps out as one of the most major concerns? Because it's beginning to be a little bit difficult to follow.
Sure. Well, I'll also make a note about the height and the density question. The height and the density aren't called out as part of the concerns by staff because those don't necessarily impact the environmental status of the property or the project. The issue that we specifically point out was more related to lot coverage or things like that. If you increase density in in an appropriate way, you can actually increase open space on a site, but the number of buildings combined with the density has kind of covered up all of the buildable area. And that is simply, a large portion of land is in floodplains. So we're just trying to work with the petitioner so that they propose a design that works with the land that they have and that makes sense for the area. It's not going to disproportionately impact neighbors and things like that. So I would add that as part of Drew's concern. And then Larry, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think overall, this sort of follows up on Jerry's comments. There's just too much there. To paraphrase Gertrude Stein. However, I mean, there's just too much. It's 1.5 acres. And once you count the driveways and the parking and all the buildings, I still don't see how it works. I mean, are cars going to be backing out of the garages into the travel lanes that go through the parking lot? Parking is allocated to the post office, and we're asked to count that towards the buildings on the lot. I mean, I think this is a great site for a small, perhaps a mixed-use neighborhood development, maybe row housing and a small mixed-use business center. But just to cram all this density onto this lot, there's just not enough space to do it. And the purpose of a PUD is not to allow the maximum development of the lot. It's to basically provide a mix of uses and innovative development. And all this is how can we cram as many buildings onto this tiny little lot as we can. I don't mean to diminish the effort here. I think it's a great site for a neighborhood development. But I think they're just trying to do too much on the site, given the constraints of traffic and drainage and lack of any usable open space.
Okay, yes.
That was my point, Larry.
I think
Sorry,
you would,
Trot, I walked on you there, but.
Oh, no, you're fine, Jerry. I think you guys answered my question. It clarifies a bit what planning is really wanting to see here. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Larry, for putting a finer point on my meandering statement.
Thank you. And so next is Commissioner Thomas, then Mr. McKim, and then Mr. Stainbrook.
Yeah, I will be brief. I am a little disappointed that comments and questions that were raised at the Plan Review Committee level didn't get included in the packet. And I think that would be helpful to have in the future. And same thing with the administrative meeting. It seems like, well, we answered the questions, they're in a different colored font. Well, that's fine, but it prevents us from having to restate the same questions. But here I go. I will do some of that. I'm going to try to avoid it, but I will likely do some of that because I don't have that in the packet in front of me. So I think Jerry asked a great question. It's the canyon effect of having a tall building next to a multi-lane, which could be 2-lane street. How close is that? How tall is that building and how close is it to the edge of the street? And so if we could get some because this is an initial hearing anyway, if we can get some comparisons, I think that might be useful for the public. So Jerry, thank you for raising that. That's the canyon effect people talk about it all the time with the city. And that's student housing built right up against the sidewalk, which is right up against the streetway. And you can see it down Morton, North Morton by 10th, right? That whole area in there is just built right up like it's New York City. Obviously not skyscrapers, but it's built up right up to the edge. And that gives a different feel. Some of this is really subjective, Tron. I know that that's not always comfortable, but the other thing I will point out is, and I raised this issue of height because I have not found yet in the packet where there's a height provided where they will stay at or under a certain height at building 1, which is the tallest one. But what concerned me was when it said multiple floors of residence on top of commercial. You don't tend to build commercial at 12 foot. You tend to go high ceiling with commercial. So if they are making a proposal for that, I would ask the petitioner to be very specific about the height. I will say I really appreciate a couple of things here and thank the petitioner for doing this, which is the incorporation of the multi-use trail, the use of and creation of mixing residential and light commercial in this building space. But yes, across the street you have 20-foot tall houses, which have existed there a lot longer. But also consider, put in your mind's eye, I asked the Plan Commission, think about what Southern Meadows is proposed to look like. Those are also 2-story tall, in the original plan, 2-story tall townhouse style or duplex style living arrangements. Those are not going to be, multi-story. So beyond 2 stories. So that raises that question of how does this fit in with an existing neighborhood and a proposed neighborhood? How will this look? The green space is great, but again, it's not usable. I had concerns that I raised on the Plan Review Committee about parking for visitors, and it's like, well, they'll just use the lots on the side behind Building 1 and next to Building 5. Well, if Building 5 happens to house a coffee shop or a restaurant that's open later, how is that going to work? How will visitors park during a breakfast rush, lunch rush, a dinner rush, whatever it might be, or if it's a local pub, if it's a little, quaint little pub. I love this idea of mixing these things with residential. I just think it's trying to put way too much on there, which begs the question for the petitioner, whether it's affordable for them to proceed limiting that height, especially Building 1. I love the idea of the sawtooth. I think that's a nice tie-in. Hopefully that would be something that's not just a decorative faux roof, but using that skylight, natural light, is really a great idea. So drainage is still a question, usable green space is a question, parking is a question. And then how does this fit in with the area? Because you have people who already live here in the area. How does this impact them, right? That's something to think about. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. McKim and then Mr. Stainbrook.
Yeah, I get the distinct feeling that I'm in the minority here. I always refer to this area informally as Clear Creek Village, and this PUD would really give it a village feel with a nice selection of varied housing options. We talk about wanting development to go where the infrastructure is already located, and here we have the opportunity. The area is served by the sanitary sewer. It's served by one of the major trails in the county. There's an elementary school within walking distance. There's a broadband endpoint actually located on the premises. I visited this site as part of a public site visit that some of my colleagues did as well, and left very excited about the project. So I hope that any concerns that my colleagues and any residents of the adjoining neighborhoods might have can be resolved, and we can get to yes on this petition. I also look forward to hearing any public comment from the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Mr. Stainbrook?
You're on mute, Jim. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
There you
I
go.
say I don't Clear Creek, but I do travel north on Rogers coming into Bloomington. And so again, I'm familiar. I felt that this would be good for Clear Creek. I'm not going to steal Jeff's characterization of a village atmosphere, but I suppose it's that kind of thing that I hope for. but with the advantage for Clear Creek, I'd be interested in hearing then if there are later some attendees that have an idea of how and would express how they feel about this proposal. But in general, I thought it would be I think it is a good thing in general, but I'm listening to all of the reservations and concerns and questions, of course. Thank you.
And so I'll recognize myself and it.
Margaret, I had my hand up a couple times, please.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I've checked. Is it Mr.
Well,
Garitas?
no, I had it up here. I'm sorry. I couldn't get my
that's
hand to work on the.
Okay, Mr. Garitas.
Okay,
Please, love
just
to
a
hear.
couple. I wasn't on the site visit with the Planning Commission, but I've been there twice since the administrative meeting. Just a couple thoughts. I'll go back to the height of the buildings. I don't know if they're too high or not, but if the petitioner maybe kind of discovers where staff is looking at with this, lowering the buildings a little bit would also decrease the density probably at least of the residential. I do take exception to that, only that with the terrain of Southern Meadows in the background and the size of those structures, it may not be as drastic as what is one might think. And again, that's subjective 110%. I see this as an area that is a destination now for a whole host of reasons: the trail, the neighborhoods, the 4 schools, the churches. I mean, there's a inclination to be here, and I think that this can promote something for the area that can make that even better. I'm just reading off some notes here I've taken this evening, and I think that the destination, I think that will continue over time. I mean, the first thing I thought of when I saw this project, and I noted how this was going to blend with the new neighborhood to the east and what's there now, I kind of got a feel of the Monon Trail up in Indianapolis, where people just kind of go and walk and spend and stop in and get coffee or ice cream or whatever. I mean, I think that can be done at a rate that could generate a little bit of that interest. And I think it could be done at a rate that doesn't have to be lightning speed. I mean, if you look to the south over on the west side of the road, there's a couple big warehouses there. I don't know if the rock climbing is still in one of them. But I just think that there's a tendency for this area to be a destination, and not just for the density in the neighborhoods, which there is a lot of density in this area now, residential, but also kind of a regional density for the south side of Bloomington and just the general things like the post office, but that's not really a big factor in my mind. I do want Mr. Kanoki to discuss a little bit what his thoughts are on the staff report's conversation with the outline plan not being able to meet the development plan. I mean, my gut feeling is that physically this site can be built, and I'm staying away from the canyon effect and all those thoughtful points that others have brought up, but physically I see that this can be built. And then yeah, I'll just stop it at that. I don't want to take up too much time here. Thank you, Margaret. I didn't mean to snap at you, but
It's okay.
I come from a family of 10, so sometimes you just got to bark out where you're at in the pecking order, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. I understand that.
I know you do. Thank you.
So I just would like to ask one question and then make a comment. And what is buildable here by right, staff? I mean, I kind of, because there are so many different lot configurations and zoning, what is, how many units could be built here by right? And then how many units total are proposed?
Margaret, are you referring to what the existing zoning is permitting by right?
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of difficult to analyze because there's so many different zoning districts right now that this property is incorporating or proposed to incorporate. But if we're looking at medium density residential, which is the Southern Meadows subdivision to the east.
Yes.
I'd have to look up the exact number there from the table, but I don't know if Jackie knows it off the top of her head, but 1 second.
So as Drew was alluding to, there's industrial zoning is currently permitted on the bulk of the buildable area. So the uses that are permitted are things like appliance repair, electrical repair, all of these industrial uses. And so it's a little bit of a switch up in the main part of the property, Margaret, which is this maroon shade, is where all the industrial uses are permitted. And then this MR shade is primarily floodplain, which is similar density to Southern Meadows. And then you have this RS 3.5, which allows for about 0.22 acre lots. And so with the buildable area that we're seeing of about 1.3, 1.4 acres, then, if it's of that, what is zone RS 3.5 is probably a half acre. We can get back to you with a little bit more on that, but it's mainly the idea here is that we replace industrial incompatible uses, which staff agrees need to be updated, with mixed use or lower neighborhood scale residential and commercial.
Okay. And so I have just a general comment and observation, having been in and around Bloomington for most of my life. First of all, serving on this plan commission as well, I tend to be a data-driven person. I do a lot of work and research with data, and I'm not getting clear answers exactly on questions about what has been built over our county, because there's such a push for density that by my estimations, we've already met the estimated workforce housing needs that have been put forth by the Indiana Regional Housing Study, that in a mere 1.5 years, when they said that estimated the need to 2030. And I think as part of our job as a plan commission is to really enable the responsible use of planning so that we don't end up with buildings that are in decline or in decay. And then also the effect of urbanizing the county area. This would make urbanizing this area of the county just a de facto obvious urbanization of what has traditionally been county property. Across the street from this is an equestrian center, and there is a growing economy for horses and for equestrian activities, and Bloomington plays a significant role in that and could even play a more significant role. I don't see necessarily that eliminating the industrial uses is a bad idea. Industry has to go somewhere. Those are questions that I have and observations that I have. I do the builder and the developer is from the area, and she has a vision for it, and I also find that compelling. And that she is of that land and from that land and has dreamt of that land her whole life and what to do with it. And this is a manifestation of that she's presenting to us. So I'm listening to that, but I'm also really reluctant with all of this densification because it just seems as though, there's a lot up in the air as far as COVID is concerned, and about the shape of our town, and what we hear are comparison cities that just don't make sense for us. It's just not making sense to me. And I don't necessarily want to see this canyon effect on this south side of town. But those are my observations. I'm kind of confused by it. I'm kind of, when I'm confused by it, I listen to the planners and the developer, and the developers. I listen to everybody, but it's all I find it very confusing. And so with that, I know that Mr. Pittsford and Mr. Enright Randolph would like to speak again, and then we'll go to we'll finish the staff or the commissioner discussion and then go to the petitioner. So Mr. Pittsford.
Okay, thank you. I have just one quick comment. I don't want my concerns to be construed as opposition to development in this location. They're just really illustrative of my concerns for what is proposed here. And then the second thing is a question kind of raised by Mr. McKim's observation that he thinks of this as a village. I wonder about pedestrian access throughout the course of a day when we talk about a village concept, and I think about walking along Rogers when that connection into that road is complete. I was down there this afternoon to pay another visit, and it wasn't a high volume of traffic, but there was a significant amount of traffic around there around 4:15. I imagine it picks up after that point in the day. But just, if staff could speak to the traffic load in that area, not to mention what it will be when Southern Meadows connection is complete. And then I look at the intensity of this. I just really wonder about the appropriateness of this intensity of development in a village concept. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yes, I just real brief. I'll tell Jerry I won't assume to know where you stand unless you define it directly in a definitive statement or from where your vote falls. So please don't be concerned about any misstrewing information. I really appreciate the conversation. My comments were about two other notable things since we got into somewhat of a regional discussion. If you go to the north, we're a half a mile from the Fullerton Pike extension, which is going to be a huge thoroughfare component to our network here. So our thoroughfare. So I wanted to note that Fullerton Pike's a half a mile to the north, and the new library is going to be a half a mile to the north. So this area is growing and changing, and I think maybe a traffic study might be justified, but at the same time, I'm not too certain about that because with the interstate basically cutting off that road, a lot of people are getting around in that area quite differently nowadays. And with Fullerton Pike, almost, to its final phases, we're going to have a nice accommodations to go east and west. So, but that's it. Like I said, I just wanted to point out those other two major improvements of this area with the local library branch and the Fullerton Pike extension. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Would someone from Highway, maybe Paul, if you're on, do you want to speak to Jerry's question about traffic in this area? Not sure. Text services, Paul, is the number. That's 812-349-2554. I don't know if since I can't put a phone number in the panelist. I don't know if he can.
They specifically have to unmute it from their end. I believe it's *6, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've asked the developer Southern Meadows to do the traffic study for this area, specifically the intersection of that road and Rogers. to see what the impacts would be of both Southern Meadows and this development, as well as the, I think they're calling it White Oak or whatever on Victor Pike. So we've asked them to do a study to cover the newest developments in the area and then see what impact that would have on the intersection. Specifically, I'm looking to see when and if the warrants for an all-way stop would be met at the intersection there. So that's something that would come out as a result of the traffic study.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. There's a new proposal for a lot more units. Is that the new proposal, the new development proposal that's being asked to conduct a traffic study, or based on the old number of units in that Southern Meadows area?
It would be based on the new proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to move the conversation to the petitioner and the petitioner's representative. So if Tamby, if you're here and you'd like to address the Plan Commission, we'd love to hear from you.
Went ahead and promoted Tamby to be a panelist so that she can speak.
Okay, also, let me share video here. There we go. Oh, great, my chin, that's nice. Okay, Jackie, could I have the ability to share screen? I don't know if I do while that one is up there on the
Tech
screen.
services, do you know?
You do.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get to. Well, I can't get to my menu there.
There we go.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Tamby Weichel Cassidy, and I represent the petitioner. I'm with Blind Squirrels LLC. And as many of you know, I am a resident of this area. I've lived here the majority of my life. It was a very exciting place to live as a kid. I mean, there were a couple general stores, the post office was there. Then the Stella's came along, eventually the Wampler House. And basically it became a quiet, sleepy neighborhood after the railroad was removed. But before that, I mean, even in the 1800s, the railroad came through in 1853, and that kind of set off some economic drivers in the Clear Creek community. There were things like a successful cattle rancher. They even had a physician. It was also the location of Smithville Telephone's first switchboard at the little house that is presently at the corner of South Rogers Street and that road. So there's been a lot of things going on there over the years, and there still is a good amount. There is an upholstery shop there on that road. The post office, as you know, Stella's, Wampler House, the two gyms, the Iron Pit Gym and the NGPT gym. So there's still quite a bit of activity. However, we don't have real good access at this time to walk along that road, or along South Rogers. So this is something that our project can help correct a bit. Just wanted to share with you a little bit about the post office. I had obtained this picture from one of the previous family owners, and this is what it looked like back in the day. It's been there since 1870, not 1970, 1870. This is a photograph of the subject property that we bought back in 2016. Back then, there was a lot of kind of unusual activity going on there at all hours of the night. Neighbors were getting frustrated. It had this haggard old structure here, and there was a storage trailer on it. So we endeavored to start cleaning up the property with hopes to open an electric bike shop. As Drew reviewed, we do have current PUD uses that are defined. But as you can see, these are really kind of industrial oriented uses. And as a neighbor to my neighbors, I appreciate that they may not necessarily like to see these industrial type uses go in there. So I wanted to bring forward a project that would help enhance the neighborhood. We have 3 elementary schools and a 4th school, middle school, really pretty close to us here at this intersection. There's Clear Creek Elementary, the Clear Creek Christian School, Lighthouse Christian Academy, and Bachelor Middle School. It's a great location for families, but it's a difficult location for families if you're looking for an apartment, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring forward uses that included apartments and then some other condominiums that are modest in size. So this is kind of when we endeavored to create an attitude about the neighborhood. We weren't really sure what plan we would bring forward, but we wanted to enhance the building with some art. So I designed this mural and we hired a local painter to paint it for us and mounted it there on the building. And people just really in the neighborhood started talking and everything was all abuzz. Well, what's going to happen here? We're like, we're really not sure. What do you want to see happen here? So we've been getting feedback for the last 3 years from neighbors on what they would like to see happen with this area other than the way it was before. I call it the building depressed. So again, I talked a little bit earlier about some of the look and feel of the businesses in the area, but you can also see I took a couple photographs of a couple of the single family homes. So this is what creates Clear Creek, is some of these businesses and the beautiful trail that we have access to, but it's indirect. So when I came up with this plan, I asked myself, what uses would you want in your neighborhood, and tried to get the input from neighbors, and I'm just really been listening to a lot of this. You got to remember this plan, this is a redevelopment of a property. This is not just taking a piece of land and developing it. It's taking some very specialized pieces of land that were something completely different back in the day and making something special out of that. We want to move away from the previous light industrial uses, and we want the PUD uses to create synergy to the existing homes and to the existing businesses. So we've asked for a good number of uses so that we could have a supply of those, but they're limited to the building footprint, which would just be the front half of the largest building and then the last building that's down closer to the south end. We wanted to have a good list of uses so that we could allow business opportunities and reduce costs of entry for an entrepreneur. Because if you wanted to start a business in this building and we didn't have you on that list of uses, you'd have to go through this whole process all over again. And now that I've been going through it, I can see why you wouldn't want to. It's a very lengthy process. We also think that these uses should create some job opportunities as a mixed use subject property should, and that those uses should be neighborhood friendly. And now I'm going to stop share, and I do need to switch to another device so I can kind of show you the model itself that I've made. Some of you have seen this and some of you haven't, and I apologize if it's boring. But let me depart from this device. Yeah, I knew that was coming, the echo. Okay.
So Tammy, I do believe we have a link that I can share, but if you switch devices, then I don't know if you'll be able to share right away.
Yes, Timmy would need to be promoted again, and we would need to know what the name is that we're looking for.
Okay. Thanks, Tech Services.
I believe that it's TC in the attendees.
you guys can see me now, right? Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around. So just to give you an idea at length, this is a model of the property at length fully. And just want you to be aware that in context, this is 4 acres altogether. And this north end of the property will be preserved as it is. We would like to create a more community usable area out of that just by cleaning up some of the invasive species of shrub. This little piece that you're seeing right here on the model is the Clear Creek. So the property line goes just north of the Clear Creek, and then it continues to this wooded area. And then there is an easement here for the current Smithville building. And then as you can see, the apartment building here with the commercial on the lower level, that would be the front side of that only, because the back side will be parking for residents with also a row of resident parking in the rear of that building. And again, that is a building that we have constructed in French Lick. The one down there was 1 section, 1 column line longer. This would be a shorter version. And the top level is really kind of just more of an architectural feature. There would be 2 apartments units up there, but it really just gives the building a better feel, allowing kind of more of a throwback feel. And then we also have like a patio on this side and some patios on the other side. And this is the sidewalk area along that road. So this is that road. This is designed with the appropriate spacing that was recommended by for the County Highway Department. And then the next series of buildings is designed so that they look similar to each other, incorporating the sawtooth. So this is the same height of the sawtooth structure of the Showers building. The peak of that, I want to say, is like right around 32 feet. And the peak, I mean like the tallest point. I was reading some ordinance information today that said if I wanted to build a house out in the county, it could be 40 feet high and my accessory structure could be 30. So just to kind of put that in comparison, and I apologize, I don't know the specific reference, but I was reading it in your document you had available today that was part of this packet. So the drive on the back, yes, it is so that you can drive directly and park directly into your garage, just like more like an alleyway space, rather than a space with parking behind that. Then the last building is also connected to those buildings on the front side. It could be separated. That's something that we could definitely consider if it feels that this linear context is too much and if you want that additional buffer. So some of the things that you mentioned, like no landscape buffer, and I see scratching of heads, that's just because these lots there are 5 units, like lengthwise in these units. They run from the front to the back and they're connected together. So there wouldn't be a landscape buffer because the lot itself, it's a condo lot is my point there. And then near the end, so this is a parking lot that would also service the post office. There's a sidewalk there that runs from the side of that building number 5 to the back through to Southern Meadows. And there's a crosswalk across South Rogers Street. And the reddish brick color is, those are the pavers for parking and also for patio. So we're trying to go with pavers for those areas that helps out with drainage. And then the last area there is the above ground detention. So we think that the stormwater management and drainage management for this project will actually help enhance what we don't have, and also from Southern Meadows, because we don't have that right now. And we think that this kind of a project will actually help with that kind of thing. And then off to the side here, I just have a little
little picture of the sawtooth a little bit closer up. So I would like to turn it over to Kendall, if you're there. Kendall?
Joining, one moment.
Kendall, if you can hear us, make the lights blink.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
There you go.
Hi, I didn't have much to add. I just wanted to address Bernie's question from earlier. It is my opinion that the development plan meets the requirements of the Monroe County Ordinance as amended by our outline plan. So just to answer that, but otherwise I'm just here to answer questions.
Real quick, Kendall,
Sure.
sorry to jump in there, Margaret, but my question was, do you think that the outline plan can develop into a development plan that'll be consistent with the outline plan? I think that's what staff's concern was in the report, that they question whether the outline plan can merge into a compliant development plan. Is that the correct way to say it, Drew?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I believe that what we're showing on the drawing does meet our outline plan.
Okay, and can I ask one more question, Margaret, then I'll step back,
Yes,
but
of
while I got the
course.
mic here. This is
Yeah.
for Tamby. Tamby, that was a beautiful model that you built. Those are very helpful.
Thanks. Thank you.
So my question is, do you think, is that, in your opinion, is that pretty close to scale?
Yes, it is.
So, this goes back to something that Commissioner Thomas asked about the building heights. So you would have had to have some concept of what your building height was going to be in order to develop a scaled model. So are you guys pretty set on what your building heights are going to be along that corridor? Because that seems to be the critical kind of path of what a lot of the conversation is going towards.
Yeah, the building height, as Kendall has defined those in the outline plan, and they're actually specific to like the lot with the apartment building and then the other buildings. So there were two different heights that we were asking for. So we feel confident that we won't exceed those heights that are defined in the outline plan. And I also feel that I just don't see a canyon effect on Rogers Street because they're not gonna be able to build across the street on Rogers Street. I mean, it's in a floodplain, so I just don't see that happening in the future that would cause that particular effect. So
well, that was actually a question I was going to ask staff on what the status of that floodplain area was on the west side of Rogers. So anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. And I think that are there any other questions from the commission members? If not, I'd like to hear from Terry Quillman about drainage in this general area, because this is an area that has concerned us before because of the complex nature and the intensity of the development. And Mr. Quillman is here, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts.
Can you hear me, Margaret?
Yes, Terry, thank you.
Is it loud or quiet?
You're perfect, as always.
Oh, thank you. I was just out there today walking the site, matter of fact. I was looking at what's happening, and it looks to me like there's just east of Building 1, there's a sinkhole in there on Southern Meadows. You can see it, the difference in the terrain, and Kendall had identified, I think he's got it identified as with a circle. That water now crosses under this site and goes to the east ditch on Rogers Road. And the rest of Southern Meadows to the south, Kendall has it designed to exit the southwest corner of Southern Meadows and leaves in a ditch. And I'm comfortable with that. I have a question for Kendall. I haven't asked him this yet, but that outfall from Southern Meadows as it goes through this site, you'll have to address that. And then I'm looking at, I haven't seen any details on his stormwater detention at this point. I've got some questions on it, but I'm just going to wait until he gives me his preliminary plan on it and see what's going on. I know the locations he's proposed, but that's about all I know on it. One's underground and one's down on the south end. At this point, I haven't done too much with it because he hasn't submitted too much. So I'll be watching it. It seems to me it's a low part of the creek. The whole area is low, and I want to make sure that he's got an outfall for it. That's the main thing.
Okay, great. So I received a text message in the chat that also one of the petitioner's representatives, Mr. Michael Flory, would like to speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just a few quick things. Let me say that we had a neighborhood meeting and I felt that it went very well. I was extremely impressed. These are sophisticated and knowledgeable people who are up on traffic and focusing on Fullerton Pike. So they've got a good overall picture of what's going to go on out in that area. And I look forward to any comments they might be giving tonight. I would say that if I could take one thing off of your plates, this concern about the large number of uses, that again really just fed into our desire to have lots of possibilities to offer to people. The very limited ground that we have to work with at most would probably give us 5 possible uses on this site, with the larger building having 4 or 5, and then the smaller building at the other end having just one business use in there. It's interesting to know that the French Lick structure that was built, I think, had 5 possible uses to begin with. Only one of those is still in business today. 4 businesses that went in didn't make it. They dropped out, and it's a wings place. Went in as a smaller business or neighboring business left. They took over and spread out. So you've got one successful business, but at least 4 or 5 had a chance to get a start out there. So the most you could ever have is what we are limited to by the structure. If we can get in and start working on this, this is going to be an opportunity to take care of and improve the drainage in the area. Right now, there's a lot of space that a farmer's cement factory would just take what was left over at the end of the day and not use it and spread it out. So you've got a lot of impervious surface out there already. So it's difficult to know what might or might not be the net effect of getting in there. Yeah, okay. Get in there and take care of problems that are pre-existing. If we walk away and nothing happens out there, they're going to not have a chance for this kind of remediation or improvement. The thing that excites a lot of us here about this project really does spring from Tambi's own experience here growing up. She hit a point in time where she simply needed to try to find an apartment to live in to move on with other aspects of her life, and couldn't do it in this position, or what she had to work with out there. So that kind of drives a lot of the desires for apartments in the larger structure. It's difficult to know how large or how many apartments should be offered to meet this kind of balance with whatever goes in Southern Meadows with the houses there and what goes on across the street. So there's this strong desire that this will be kind of a good gateway project, a place that people are aware of and know about and can focus on something like the sawtooth roof and the small amount of businesses that could go in under best circumstances, and the apartments offered in the larger structure. In our discussion with the neighborhood, we actually pointed out if the right businesses actually do wind up in the larger building, that may help alleviate traffic in some ways, because if you've got people in Southern Meadows who don't have to drive out and turn on to South Roger Street, if they can take care of some of their needs with the businesses that are there, if they can walk with the extensive trail system that is constructed out there, the net effect may actually be some improvement or taking pressure off. Plus, you've got access onto South Rogers down off of the what is going to be the parking lot for the post office. We've already got a driveway cut approval to take care of that. That's not a good or safe system or parking situation right now. That will improve that. So how to weigh the pros and cons of things like that are difficult. It seems to me that the biggest question will be the need for apartments and what can be served by the apartments in the larger building. We're excited about still working with planning and try to come up with the answers to these questions and problems. I will say that personally, I found our work with Mr. Myers to be extremely helpful, because at one point in time, he suggested when we were talking about the large number of uses and the menu effect we were hoping for, he suggested that really the focus should be on, or we should consider focusing on just uses that would have a stronger appeal to the neighbors. And I think just that one observation on his part gave a major change to the ideas that we're bringing forward and what we're looking at. So we do look forward to the possibility of further refinement along these lines. But what we're trying to do is come up with a project that meets what we know are county goals, to have less use of cars, less reliance on cars, tremendous investment in the trail system out here, what can actually be achieved by kind of a major shift in this kind of focus on how transportation works. So that's what we're trying to design here. I forget who said it earlier. The question is, we are extremely excited about this. We think it's a good project and it's got great potential for this area, for people across the street, for people who are going to be building houses, buying houses in the Southern Meadows area. How can we get everybody on the same page about being excited what the possibilities are here? And we're committed to still work for that in the period between now and the next meeting, because I don't think you want to put it to a vote tonight, and that's fine with us. I kind of enjoyed this negotiation and brainstorming to make something better. Do you have any questions?
Are there questions for Mr. Flory? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Mr. Enright Randolph.
I guess at the very end, there was a recommendation that we don't take this to a vote. Obviously, this is the initial hearing, but Mr. Flory, were you speaking on the behalf of the petitioner as well?
I'm trying to get a read of the
right. I'm just wondering.
Planning Commission. I mean, if you want to pass it tonight, we view it as a shovel-ready project that we'd like to jump in and start doing things. We view it as a project that still can use some refinement. So
that doesn't really answer my question. I guess, are you speaking on the behalf of the petitioner when you made that?
The petitioner is sitting next to me, and she is not giving me threatening looks or anything else.
Okay.
I think she has the same understanding and read of this that I do. I mean, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I think that, I would love to have a yes vote this evening. And if you think we're heading in that direction, it's one of the reasons why we waited to do the development plan, because we think a lot of those other details can be ironed out in a development plan. So
you may make a final decision after you hear public comment too.
Right. Thank you for addressing my question. I'll just kind of
Thank you.
reframe that you're fine with moving it forward if you feel that this commission is moving towards a negative vote. So thank you for answering that question. I just wanted to make sure it was clear if you were speaking on the behalf. So thank both of you for answering that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Randolph. Would any members of the public would like to speak either for or against this petition?
We have 5 members. Oh, okay. Sorry, they are raising their hand quickly. People are on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members that would like to speak.
Okay, well, you know, the evening is getting late, but this is a development, so I'm not going to restrict time. I just request that people, you know, be respectful of our time because we have 2 more cases to hear tonight.
Michelle, could you go ahead and start unmuting people in the order?
I can. Also, one thing to note, we don't have any way to tell whether they're speaking for or against the petition, so we'll have to just take them in one lump sum.
That's fine.
First up is going to be Donna.
Hi, Donna. Thank you for coming tonight.
Sure. Hello again. I wanted to say that my husband and I own the Wampler house, which is 2 lots south of Tamby's area there, and that we would like to see a building up there. We would like to have Clear Creek have a gathering place, have something, if there's a coffee shop, if there's a restaurant, anything like that, it would be wonderful because it's a lovely place, but we really don't have a center or a place to meet up or gather or chat. So that's one of the things we're looking forward to. We're, of course, density is a problem or a concern just because the Southern Meadows is coming in as well. So that's going to be kind of a shock to the system. But we do like Tamby's design and her intentions and what she would like to do for Clear Creek. And so we would be for her.
Okay, is that all?
Yes.
Ms. Malham? Thank you. I've hosted a few conferences and retreats at your at the Wampler House, and I really loved it. So I want to thank you for the services you provide to the community.
You bet. We love it. We love being here.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Next up is Mark and Diane.
Hello, Mark and Diane. Welcome to our Plan Commission.
Well, thanks for letting me attend. Appreciate being able to give my input. Okay, I just to be sure, try to make this short, but I'm a 67-year resident of Bloomington and moved to Clear Creek 30 years ago. And I live right next door to the Clear Creek School. And I'm a walker. I walk about 15,000 steps a day. And so I go back to thinking the way it used to be, where you walked everywhere. And when I was growing up in the Rogers School area, and then you could about hit any type of business that you wanted to if you wanted to go get something. So I remember walking around as a kid, just going all over and having that big playground. So I think this is just, I'm really looking forward to the possibilities that this development shows, especially the walking. Right now, Rogers is so dangerous to walk on, and the traffic is terrible, and to try for a pedestrian to do anything is difficult. I traverse it a lot to get to rails to trails, but at the same time, this development and offering some multi-use trail is just wonderful. And then all the possibilities of the type of businesses that could go in here. I think of an ice cream shop for all the kids. The coffee shop has been mentioned. I'm an artist. I'd love to see an art co-op go in there, and I could offer my artwork in there and just create a little atmosphere that it would be to enhance what Clear Creek is. You guys could talk more about the density and everything else, and how crowded that would be. But I think to change I think one of you mentioned to change the culture so that we're more of a pedestrian community where we could walk to do anything. I think it'd be a great addition to this neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Mark and Diane. Are you both Riggins? I hate to be presumptuous.
Yeah.
But, okay, thank you very much for your contribution.
Okay.
And the next person?
Next up is Daniela.
Hi, Daniela, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'll try to respect everyone's time and keep this pretty short. I moved to Clear Creek a couple years ago from South Florida, and Tamby and Randy really just welcomed me into the community and showed me around. And you could just really feel the love that they have for Clear Creek, and I think that's really reflected in this project that Tamby has, poured her heart and soul into. There's a nod to the historical aspect of Clear Creek and just really trying to improve the community. And as someone who lives there and really enjoys using the trail system, I think it's just a super cool opportunity to be able to have that multi-use trail, as well as, all these different opportunities like a coffee shop or an ice cream place that have been mentioned as just possibilities. But to be able to just pop in there and walk there and have this like central hub to Clear Creek that we don't currently have, I think that would just be fantastic. So I just want to just state for the record that I'm for this.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that, Daniela, and welcome to Bloomington.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next person who would like to speak on this?
Next up is BEDC.
Yes, great.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Pearl, and I'm with the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, the BEDC. And we just wanted to thank the Plan Commission for considering housing for the community. I will defer to others regarding the technical evaluation of the proposal, but we do continue to hear from employers about the challenges around available housing, which puts pressure on workers, individuals, and their families. And so we just appreciate the careful consideration of opportunities like these for the community.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you for everything you do for Bloomington and the area.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you all.
Thank you. And the next person here?
Next up is Nick.
Hi, Nick. Welcome to our commission meeting.
Hi, thank you. So my fiance and I have lived next to the post office on South Rogers for about 2 years now. Very excited about the idea of the kind of mixed commercial usage. Obviously, the additional types of housing that this would bring in. The biggest selling point for us, though, is the improvements to the infrastructure, specifically the walking paths that connect to the trails, the additional parking for the post office, which is just a hazard. I mean, we live next to it and see near accidents almost daily. So those improvements would be huge. Obviously, some of the concerns seem valid as far as how much parking would be used by certain businesses that might come in, but all in all, it seems like a big improvement to the area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zwissler. And the next person who would like to speak?
Next up is Liz.
Liz?
This is Liz Irwin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight in favor of this project. I don't live in Clear Creek, but I live in a neighborhood adjacent to Clear Creek, and I'm really excited about the project. I know from a regional economic benefit perspective, we've heard about the regional housing shortage. So I believe this project's going to help us as a region and offer additional housing for people that might want to move here. But I really want to focus on the amenities for our local community. We've heard about improvements to safety and walkability for those of us who live nearby, but it may also attract some other people from the community that want to visit, whether they're using the trails or needing to walk along that road. I think it's super exciting to see investment in this area, and I particularly like the concept of bringing back the Clear Creek of older times. I think it's going to be wonderful to have a coffee shop or other destination to visit while using the trails, or not only for those who live here, but for others who may want to come and use the amenities. And it's great to see someone showing some interest in making this part of the world just a little bit better. You saw the pictures of what it used to be, and the Cassidys have already shown great interest in making those improvements. I think that the point about redevelopment of an existing site is a key component. The fact that the options are already somewhat limited, it's nice to see such creativity. I think that this project fits in with some of the additional mentioned development, such as Fullerton Pike. We're seeing banks come along Fullerton Pike, and then the library is going to also come into the area. But I also want to mention the integrity of the petitioner. The Cassidys are invested in this community. They live in this neighborhood, and they truly care about making the improvements. I don't think we could ask for a better investor than someone who lives here already and wants to make things better. And I think they're doing things the right way. The transparent process that they've used in getting the input from the neighbors and helping the neighbors make the decisions and identify how to move forward with the project. You can see that the people who live in this area are excited, and I hope that you will support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. And the next person?
Next up is Samantha.
Okay, Samantha.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Samantha Bremen, and I'm a real estate broker as well as a nearby resident. I'm from here in Monroe County, and over the years I've noticed this area is growing and pretty fast. And as one person mentioned, we've already got a new library going in less than a mile north of here. I think many surrounding neighbors, including myself, are very excited to see this project move forward. It allows for numerous options for businesses, and with its expanded use list that I saw was, pretty exciting. And for those of us who live nearby and use the trails to walk or bike, we would welcome it, as it will be not only aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but functional to the already established Clear Creek neighborhood. And as Liz had just mentioned as well, the Cassidys are not just business people coming here looking to turn a profit. They're from here, and they care about the community and wanting to invest in not only, a project, but a place that they support and live and have their own futures. So with that, I just want to say that I overwhelmingly get behind this project and excited to see it get passed. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, next up is Jack.
Jack? Jack, if you could speak and also give us your last name and tell us where you live. Jack Stiles.
Yeah, Jack Skiles, Jack and Jill. We live in the brilliant blue house next to Stella's, across from the bed and breakfast. We also are very happy to have this development being considered and have no complaints really, except, maybe that lot is getting a lot on it. And so I hope that the staff helps us work through what that lot maybe can maximally handle. Our concerns, apart from all the positives, have to do with density. When you add what the Cassidys are doing along with Southern Meadows, that's 120 to 190 homes plus what the Cassidys are doing. That is a lot of density. Number two, traffic. Traffic already is absolutely horrible on Rogers Street. I appreciate the gentleman that was here at 4:15 in the afternoon, but it is really horrible all of the time. And there is no good way for people from what the Cassidys are proposing and what Southern Meadows is proposing for people to be able to safely cross Rogers and get to the trail system. I do it every day as a kind of an old guy, and it's dangerous out there. And I still don't see a proposal to make being on the west side of Rogers Street a safe place. or for the people to get to the trail system safely. And then number three, which is perhaps the most important issue, has to do with water runoff. Everything is going to come to the southwest corner of that property. It happens to cross under Rogers Street and crosses through my property. And I'm very concerned that we see things get better as opposed to being more complex with more water coming where it has no place to go. So thank you very much. We're happy in general, but would like to see the complexity of the issues really sorted through before it's approved.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Skiles. Thank you. Is there another member here who would like to speak?
Last up is Robert.
Robert? Robert Logsdon?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I was muted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thanks again for letting me speak. I appreciate all the hard work that's being done to observe this project and its proposal. First of all, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to bring a lot of variety to the area, and going to be in the picture a very nice proposal to move forward. I have concerns, and I hope that the people that are in authority and have the expertise, but I want to mention some more detail. Rogers and that road, the northwest corner there. Resident here, a lot longer than Tammy, but I was 1933, so I've seen the area from its beginning. 79, I bought the old Oddfellows building, which is currently Stella's place. And then in 1984, I bought the house next to it to the south. So I've lived here, and with the railroad gone, things are changing. This is going to be a very nice addition. I have my concerns, though, of the traffic. This artery is carrying a tremendous amount of traffic. The S-curve at the railroad, where the railroad was here, is the site of many, many accidents. And I've got a ton of pictures of the wrecks that have happened there. A county deputy car was totaled here in this curve, and a lot of other wrecks and all. But anyhow, if the traffic can be addressed, I don't know what they would do about it. But when 69 is connected with Fullerton, it's going to bring a tremendous amount of traffic from the west to the east. The other thing is the foot traffic on Rogers Street. We have 3 schools, churches and all, within a half a mile of this area. And there's no sidewalk for the kids to walk on. There's a lot of bicycle traffic here from the university that goes up and down Rogers Street. And I don't know who's responsible for it, but the end of that trail on the east side of Rogers Street, there's a walking area, is going to stop apparently at about the Finley project down there. And I don't know what would be the solution to people traversing on down South Rogers Street to have not to empty out on Rogers Street again. The other things that I'm concerned about is basically the children walking to, a lot of them walk to school. And there's another development that's has been proposed here back just a short ways off of that road on the south side of that road. I don't know where that is in its planning department, but one of the big issues is the water runoff of the area. Clear Creek is already stressed and overloaded and is in a floodplain, and the backs of these properties here on the west side of Rogers Street is in a floodplain, and all of the water from the Bloomington area and the west comes down to Clear Creek. It's joined by the east fork of Clear Creek, just north of Church Lane. And just south of that, Jackson Creek connects in with Clear Creek, and it carries all the water from the west side of Bloomington, or the east side of Bloomington, down to the south of 37 there. So the problem is, and I don't know who needs to address this, but there's no place for water to go. The Clear Creek had been impeded by, well, there's a dam here by the parking lot at the Orange Gym, that to keep their parking lot from flooded, but it backs up water into the backyard of the residents here in Clear Creek. And then on down where the old Fraso plant was, they put in an Arkansas bridge, and I call it just a concrete footing in the bottom of the creek bed there so they could drive across to their property on the other side of the creek. And it's a very serious project. And I think I understood someone to say that the, no, who's going to do the water study issue?
You mean the drainage issues?
Drainage issue, yeah.
Mr. Quillman has been working on it, but again, this plan is not that developed yet, so.
I see.
Yeah.
And was a traffic study going to be left up to the developers, or who was that going to be done by?
Yeah, that was the proposal, to leave it up to the developer of the adjoining property, so.
Well, I just don't know much about the mechanics of these things, but that sounds strange that it wouldn't be a entity of the government that would be looking after the safety of the children and the pedestrians. But
I agree with you on that.
So the density is an issue. Started out with 90 units, now we're up to 226 or something. But I'm still for the project going ahead and for you experts to work out these little kinks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Logsdon. Your comments have been very informative. We really appreciate your showing up tonight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else, any other member of the public who would like to speak?
We have one more, Tom.
Tom? Hi, Tom. Tom Winninger.
Tom, I believe you're on mute. Looks like Tom might be on 2 devices. Michelle, oh, okay. Tom, can you hear us now? He's also Weiniger Construction, Michelle. I don't know if.
Okay, Mr. Weiniger.
I'm not sure if we can hear you, Mr. Weiniger. So if you want to put maybe your comment into the chat. Yeah, I'm not sure, Michelle. I think we'll have to move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Commissioner Thomas has a question.
I do, and this is something I was going to ask once we saw how people were feeling, but I just want to ask this. It ties in with what the public has been saying, and I think there's some great comments in there. You know, that's true. It would be great to have a little neighborhood place and social gathering and commercial enterprises, but traffic is an issue. And so I have 2 questions related to that, if the petition continues, I would like to have answered. The first one relates to getting that traffic study from Southern Meadows before we finish this piece off. If Southern Meadows got delayed because they changed the parameters of the development that they're proposing, so I don't know when we would get that traffic study information, but it seems like it's more important to have that than to wait on the other development. And I don't know how those 2 things are aligning, so maybe Drew can work on that. The other thing is, it seems to me that a hawk light would be really appropriate at this intersection. And it may be in conjunction with a 4-way stop if that's the decision of Highway Department. But my question would be, who would pay for that hawk light to be installed for safety? So if people are using the parking lot across the street to go to the post office, they can do so safely. People want to cross over to the other side of Rogers to go to the other part of the trail, they can do so. I think it would make a lot of sense to put a hawk light in here, and so I would like Highway to talk about that. The third issue is related to drainage. I feel like, having heard there's issue X, issue Y, this might work, this might not. I hate leaving that to the next meeting because I feel like I want these things to be, not totally resolved, but at least resolvable before we approve a PUD. Cart and horse. So that's just my take on it. Thank you.
Mr. Enright Randolph.
Raise it again. Yeah. Oh, we have Tom. I would just quickly say, it goes right along with Julie's comments. If you could include the off-road improvements that were part of the other petition as well, I think if this does move to another round, that would be very helpful for us. Good.
Am I on now?
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Just wanted to add in that I want support this project also, and that I will be doing the traffic study for Soma completed, this project completed, White Oaks completed, all that traffic together. And I've entered into a contract with a engineering firm to do that. When I'll have that, probably February, before I have that study completed. And then also that I would like to make that multi-use trail connect up to the old rail, that so that the Clear Creek residents wouldn't have to cross Rogers. They could just get on Beeline and stay on the east side of Rogers. I'm trying to think of anything else that was talked about, but we're going to do our drainage study, and the way I understand it, and Kendall can correct us, and Mr. Quillman can too, that when we're completed, that we'll let off less water at a slower rate than what it is now. So we'll help the drainage issues. And I'm all about building homes for young people to afford to live in Monroe County and be a part of it. I've lived here, or my family has, for 3 generations. It's a great place to live, but there is a shortage of housing. That's all I've ever done my entire life. And that's all my family's done. And there's no opportunities for kids to own a home in this county. If you look it up, there's 2 homes under $250,000 right now, under a year or newer. I'd like to give those kids an opportunity to own a home. And Catalin, they need workforce, and Cook needs it. And where are these people going to go? I like to try to help solve that problem. I appreciate your time, and Tammy did a great job, great presentation. And yep, I'd like to be a part of the neighborhood too. And also, another note, I will be connecting a sidewalk to the Clear Creek school too, so the kids can go from there into my community. So hope to see y'all again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weininger. And I see Mr. McKim has a question or a comment.
Yes, a question. Thank you for staff. So it's been mentioned several times that obviously the drainage is a concern, and also that it's been mentioned a couple times that we don't have all of the drainage details. I think Mr. Quillman mentioned that there wasn't much for him to review. Is that typical at this phase of the development, or do we have less information on the drainage solutions than we typically would at the moment of an outline plan?
That's a good question, Jeff. At this point, typically with an outline plan, it's kind of up to staff or the plan commission if they feel like they don't have enough information to make a decision. We have seen it both ways recently. I think when you have a lot of pervious cover and other constraints, then it makes the drainage calculations or feasibility. Certainly we got this, and I don't think Terry's had a chance to see even what's on the screen. So if Terry and Kendall can have a high level conversation and just prove that there's capacity. We don't have to get down to like approving the grading plan, approving the pipe sizes. Like it's not that in depth. It's just like abstract or a little bit more high level, I shouldn't say abstract, of like, does the area that's being proposed fit the storage that's being proposed?
Helpful, thank you.
Looks like Jerry has his hand raised. Larry, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just real quickly. I mean, one of the problems, again, one of the issues is the size of the site. There's no room for error. So it's not like it's 80 acres and if you run into a problem, you can address it with like within the 30 or 40 acres of remaining open space. So I think that's the concern that we kind of have is we need details. I mean, we need number of bedrooms, we need the size of the aisle widths, the parking spaces, that kind of information, because with the wide variety of uses there, you know, we've got to make sure that there's adequate parking for every use on that list, or then we have a problem because we're permitting it and they have their own development standards. So I think we need firm development standards set forth in the PUD, either adopting our development standards or clearly expressing what those new development standards are. And one of them, just side thought, if there's an existing building in French Lick that matches this one they're proposing, if we can get the address on that, that would be really useful to give people an idea what we're talking about.
I'll note, Larry, it was presented in Drew's presentation. It's this one right here on the screen, but we'll get the address.
Okay,
and send it
I
out.
missed it. I couldn't hear very well, so.
That's okay. Jerry, did you have something?
Yeah, just 2 quick points. Number one, to Jeff's point about the specificity of managing stormwater effluent. In this situation, as Larry kind of pointed out, you have a limited amount of space to manage that, and you also have floodplain concerns. So that's number one, just for consideration, not discussion. And then the second thing is, I know we have CBU down there, but do we have a certificate of capacity that they can handle the capacity in this area that this kind of development would generate?
Do you want to answer that, Drew?
Yeah, let me look through my files from what was submitted. I believe that we do have something with respect to CBU's approval, or at least verification that there is capacity. See here.
And the reason I ask that is there's various build out in specific areas, especially in that corridor of the county.
Yes, we have a will serve letter dated November 30th, 2020 from City of Bloomington Utilities, stating that they have the availability for sanitary sewer and water service for this location.
Thank you, Drew.
Okay, are there any other, is there any other discussion among the commission members? I don't believe that there is, we're ready for a vote on this, but if I am stood corrected, so be it. If there is a motion, please make it. Otherwise, let's move on to the next case. And we have 2 more items. I think we can finish pretty quickly. And are there any motions at this time? Okay, I would just like to thank everyone for their really serious discussion of this proposal, and also to the developers for presenting it to us and for the community area to kind of help us know what to watch out for. Move on to our next case, and I'm a little bit buried in paper. I know
I can do it, Maureen. It is Yeah, 2011-SAD-14, the Wallbridge Type F Administrative Subdivision Right-of-Way Waiver Request. And this one is Drew's.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you. All right. So this property is located at 3125 South Snotty Road. It's in Perry Township, Section 14. The petitioner is requesting a waiver from Chapter 856-28B for the right-of-way requirement established by the Monroe County Thoroughfare Plan. Petition site is 0.92 acres, and it has frontage along South Snotty Road. It also contains a pre-existing non-conforming residence, 2 utility sheds, and an existing 0.01 acre cemetery. The residence is considered pre-existing non-conforming due to the fact that it does not meet the side yard setback requirements for its zoning district, which is RE1. This Type F subdivision petition has been filed to reestablish the lot lines between the existing residential property and the existing cemetery. The right-of-way with waivers being requested in order to preserve the boundaries of the existing cemetery and remove the existing cemetery from the petitioner's property for liability purposes. Now, the thoroughfare plan requires 45 feet of right-of-way dedication for South Snotty Road since it's a minor collector. However, the petitioner is requesting a right-of-way waiver for 18.3 feet of dedication along South Snotty Road for approximately 29 feet, which is the length of the cemetery that fronts South Snotty Road. And the rest of the length of the petition site is petitioned to be 25 feet of right-of-way. Although the Type F administrative subdivision process makes this property less conforming in its lot size due to the exclusion of the cemetery, and the minimum requirement for the zoning district is 1 acre, but Chapter 833 of the zoning ordinance allows for development in a substandard lot such as this. So here we have the location on South Snotty Road, Perry Township. Here we have the current zoning of RE1 as well as the comprehensive plan, which has it designated as let's see, conservation residential, I think. Can't read it very clearly here. I think it's Makua suburban residential, actually. Anyways, site conditions here. As I stated, it has a residence on the property. You can see that there in the foreground. And then the existing cemetery is in the lower left-hand corner of the petition site. There's no FEMA floodplain. There's no visible karst on the property. It's just that cemetery and the home for the most part. Here we have some aerial photographs of the petition site, one from the north and one from the south. The existing cemetery is kind of hard to see because of the foliage here. But it is there. There is a retaining wall along the edge of South Snotty Road with the cemetery. And it is requested for 18.3 feet as stated in the packet because planning staff recommended that in order to make sure that retaining wall is not anywhere close to county right-of-way. Here we have the petitioner's findings, submitted findings for the right-of-way with waiver request. You'll note that they state the establishment of the cemetery in the 1800s and that it's existed for quite some time. And here we have an updated plat. This one is newer. It reflects that requested 18.3 feet of requested right-of-way instead of the 20 feet that the previous plat document indicated. I highlighted that in the red circle here. So this plat document with that adjustment is not in the packet, but I received that earlier this week or late last week. I forget exactly when, but it has been updated and it is here. Overall, planning staff recommends approval of the right-of-way with waiver based on findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway and Drainage Engineer reports. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Are there any other questions for Mr. Myers? If not, we can move to, oh, did you have a question, Dee? No. Okay, we can move to the public and This is a motion that this is a proposal that you made, right? Drew, as a member of the county, correct? Or is the petitioner here?
I believe the petitioner's representative is on the line.
Okay.
Todd Borgman.
Mr. Boardman, would you like to address the Plan Commission?
I'll go ahead and start with the property owner who presented the petition for the cemetery, Mr.
Yeah.
Walbridge.
Mr. Walbridge?
I
Can you-
actually show you a picture of the cemetery. Let me share screen, but
Mr. Walbridge, I think because of the webinar venue, I can make you a panelist real fast before we do that. Hold on.
okay. Thank you. The cemetery was established in the 1830s by a church that's one of the ancestors of the Presbyterian.
Sorry, he cut out for just a second while I promoted him to panelist. Mr. Walbridge, can you still hear us? You'll have to unmute. There you go. Okay,
Okay.
we can see your screen. Yep.
Okay. Do you see the picture?
No.
I see a URL, Politico magazine.
No, that's not what I'm after. My apologies. That is.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is great.
Okay. Sorry about the confusion. At any rate, I'd lived in that property since the beginning of 1994. My first wife died there. She wanted to be buried there, which is appropriate. And since then, my parents also were buried there. We restored the cemetery, put in the wall, and would like to keep it separate from the properties. I'm in the process of selling the house, and we prefer to keep the cemetery in the family. So that's what there is to it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for caring about our county's history and the preservation of this cemetery. I appreciate your showing up tonight and telling us about this. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? The petitioner representative, did you say Mr. Boardman is here?
Yes, Mr. Borgman is on unmute. So Mr. Borgman, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone for sticking around tonight. It's been a long night for everyone. We appreciate your work, and we hope that you approve the petition tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borgman. Are there any members of the community here who are interested and would like to speak either in favor or opposed to this petition?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring it back to members of the commission for either discussion or a motion.
There we go. I was looking for it. I'll make a motion to approve case number 2011-SAD-14. Subject or approval of the right-of-way with waiver based on the findings of fact, subject to the Monroe County Highway and Drainage Engineer report.
Second.
I'm gonna.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
The vote is on petition number 2011-SAD-14, Walbridge Type F Administrative Subdivision, right-of-way waiver request. The vote is to approve the right-of-way waiver request. And it includes the waiver of the final hearing, so this will be the final vote regarding the waiver of right-of-way at 3125 South Snotty Road. Again, a vote in favor is a vote to approve the waiver of right-of-way request. Jeff McKim?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook?
Yes.
Motion detected at the back door.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Lee Owens,
Yes.
Murray Clements,
Yes.
Ronnie Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Rudy Geritas.
Yes.
A motion is approved by a 9-0 vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walbridge, and thank you, Mr. Borgman, for hanging in there with us tonight and for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Oh, okay, ladies and gentlemen, for good or for ill, you know I'm a task manager. So the last thing that we have on our agenda tonight is 2101 ZOA-01, and this is an amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance regarding signs. I would assume that either staff or Mr. Schilling will present this to us.
Yeah, this is Larry, and I have made amendments to the ordinance since the administrative meeting, and still need to review those with Dave Schilling yet. We've also submitted it to the consultant for comments. So I'm going to ask for this to be continued to the administrative meeting in February, in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So moved.
And my dog seconded the motion.
Second.
Okay. So should you call the roll for a continuance?
If we can just do it by consensus, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, then if there, are there any reports?
The only thing I have is the General Assembly has started up again, and there are numerous bills that have been introduced. We're going to be keeping an eye on those and probably testifying in regard to those bills. And I'll try to get you, all the Plan Commission members, an update as soon as these bills get firmed up a little bit as far as the total that we're facing this session.
If there's anything that requires us to go up to Indianapolis, please let us know.
My guess is the testimony will be taken through Zoom. So I will let you know when those hearings are set. All the hearings that were set for this week have been canceled for security reasons.
It's by Zoom, Larry, but you have to be at the State House in a separate room. You can't Zoom in from home.
That's convenient.
It's really convenient. The county's looking at a contract with a lobbyist, and we could fold in our zoning and planning interests into that as well. So we've never had one before. So
that's good. If they need bodies, though, to support something critical, let us know.
Yep. Emails. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that we might be done. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any objections?
All third.
I think it's great. We've had a really short meeting for Dee's first meeting.
Yeah. Lucky Dee.
Thanks a lot.